across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There is outrage at the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who has been talking about what happened in Afghanistan. He has said that UK troops and other NATO troops didn't go to the front line. That is, of course, completely untrue. We know that 457 servicemen and women lost their lives in Afghanistan in that war, and many, many thousands more served this country with great bravery and distinction. There is huge outrage on this. We're going to cover this today. I know that a lot of veterans, a lot of families of veterans, a lot of people who care about the military watch and listen to this show, so I want to give you a voice to make your comments clear on that. Some of the things that Donald Trump says, a lot of people are skeptical about, and we say actually maybe they're worth talking about, maybe they're worth thinking about, or you can see his logic. But with Donald Trump, should he apologise for his remarks in regard to Afghanistan, particularly when it comes to the 457 families absolutely devastated by that loss of life there? Also the fact that there are loads of people living with physical and mental injuries to this day. We're going to talk about that story. That's our main story today. Lots of people contacted me about that already on social media, and I'll come to some of those comments. Andy Burnham urged not to rock the boat with the Starmer challenge. Those are the comments of David Lammy, the Justice Secretary. He's saying he might U-turn. Another U-turn could be the 15th of the government, this time on jury trials. We'll speak to Carl Turner MP, the Labour MP, a little bit later on. Lots to discuss on Lammy, lots to discuss on Trump, lots to discuss on Heathrow, ending 100 millilitre liquid rules. We'll talk to Simon Calder about that. Also policing, Peter Blexley will be with us. The number of police forces to be cut in a major shake-up. Also a UKIP march has been banned over fears about a counter-protest. We've got all the sport. We'll find out what's in the sun as usual. We'll talk about the Traitors as well. The final is tonight. It's an incredible show. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's brilliant. Maybe you do too, or maybe you know nothing about it. Well, we're going to hear a lot about that later on in the programme, because it is the final tonight, and there was an absolute cliffhanger last night. Loads to discuss in the programme. I want your voice on the air. It's 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. Maybe you're a veteran. Maybe you want to get this off your chest. Voice note's a good way to do it. Or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000, or send me a WhatsApp text message on that number too. You can ring on that number too, as I said. So much to discuss here on Talk Drive. Well, let's just see the comments to Fox News that started all this off. This is Donald Trump's controversial comments on Afghanistan.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
A little off the front lines. That is just not true. That is, there are things that Donald Trump says that have a version of truth, of some element of truth. It's just not true. British soldiers were at the front lines. One man who was there was Colonel Al Cairns. He's a defence minister. He's now a Labour MP. He served in Afghanistan, and he's just one of the many politicians and veterans who've been reacting to what the President said. He's a highly decorated former Royal Marines colonel. He holds the Distinguished Service Order and the Military Cross. You don't get the Military Cross for nothing. You get it for huge bravery, particularly brave acts. This is what Colonel Al Cairns, the Defence Minister, now Labour MP, said today.
So tracking some comments made that NATO troops stayed a little off the front lines in Afghanistan and that the US has never necessarily needed us. Well, it's a real shame to hear that. The only time NATO has ever enacted Article 5 was after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, when the United States and the world rallied to the support of the US. Our agencies, our forces, our politicians, we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and responded. On Afghanistan, frankly, this is utterly ridiculous. Many courageous and honourable service personnel from many nations fought on the front line. Many fought way beyond it. I'd served 5 tours in Afghanistan. Many alongside my American colleagues. We shed blood, sweat and tears together.
Al Cairns there, the Defence Minister, one of the most highly decorated former Royal Marines who served in Afghanistan. So do you think that Donald Trump should apologise? The Prime Minister in the last few minutes has said that the President's remarks about British troops were insulting and frankly appalling, and suggested he should apologise. Do you agree with the Prime Minister? Do you think Donald Trump should apologise for his comments that we heard there a minute ago? The Afghan veterans community says, we at the UK Afghan veterans community are proud of the service of the 150,000 UK personnel who served alongside our coalition allies in Afghanistan, which numbered at one time 48 nations, including both the UK and US. We will never forget the 457 UK service persons who paid the ultimate sacrifice, are wounded, and the families and friends who live on. The Royal British Legion's Director General Mark Atkinson says the service and sacrifice of British personnel in Afghanistan cannot be called into question. He's right, and we condemn any comments that undermine their extraordinary contribution. 457 British personnel lost their lives in Afghanistan. Thousands more and their families now live with the lifelong physical and mental impact from service in that conflict. The dedication and sacrifice of the men and women in the British Armed Forces from the UK, Commonwealth and beyond to protect our freedoms and support our allies deserves our deep and ongoing respect and gratitude. Stephen's been in touch already on text and says, I can't actually believe Donald Trump's comments regarding Afghanistan. I went in 2010. I was living in a storage container with my troops in the front line with no support. I was also on patrol. I witnessed my friend die from an IED, an improvised explosive device. I'm absolutely furious, and these comments really trigger my post-traumatic stress disorder. Stephen, I thank you for your service to our country. I'm so sorry you went through that with your friend. You're an incredibly brave person, as are so many of the veterans who I know listen to this programme, many of whom will have been in Afghanistan. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor and joins me now. Isabel, your reaction?
Well, this feels a bit of a turning point, I think, in UK relations with Donald Trump. I feel that many on the right of UK politics who are drawn to Donald Trump for all sorts of reasons, in particular his uncompromising attitude to illegal immigration and crime in America, will be so repelled by these comments that they are going to find it increasingly difficult to support or align with Donald Trump on other things. I think the president has, in the last 48 hours, in all manner of ways, really seriously damaged his global reputation, which of course was always extremely divisive anyway. But this feels like the kind of final straw for a lot of people. Those remarks are abhorrent. They really are abhorrent. I mean, I was a political journalist during the years of the Afghanistan, peak Afghanistan losses, and used to sit in Parliament as the Prime Minister would read out the names of the latest fatalities. And it was tremendously sobering, as it was seeing the bodies being brought back to Wotton Bassett, and how Donald Trump could have thought it remotely acceptable to voice an opinion like that. I just don't know. You know, so many people not only paid the ultimate price, but as you very rightly point out, are still suffering because of what they witnessed and went through on the front line. You know, the comments are almost so ludicrous that in a sense you don't need to give them any more airtime, but I think a lot of people feel the need to articulate something to get it off their chest because he's just insulted them so badly and the memory of their fallen comrades.
And just when you mentioned Wotton Bassett there, it was of course renamed Royal Wotton Bassett in a huge and very deep sense of appreciation to Wotton Bassett, to its base there, to the people who lived there, for how they treated the families, the compassion they showed to the families and to the servicemen and women who were mourning their dead, who made the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. It's also, to me, it's your point about it being, it's so ludicrous, it's so stupid. I mean, it just defies any explanation, really, for why he said it. I know he has, Donald Trump has a difficult relationship with NATO. I know there are all sorts of discussions that have been had this week. And actually, it was after Afghanistan, what led to Afghanistan was the only time in NATO's 77-year history where Article 5, the idea that if one NATO member is attacked, they're all attacked. This Article 5 of its charter that was actually invoked was after 9/11. That led directly to what happened in Afghanistan and probably indirectly to the Iraq War as well. So, I mean, it's really interesting that it's so clear. You can draw a very, very clear, straight line between those two, and so many people just know this, and it's never been questioned. It's just a fact. So for Donald Trump to say it's kind of surreal, actually, Isabel.
Well, when you said he's got a difficult relationship with NATO, I thought you were going to say he's got a difficult relationship with the truth.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the past 48 hours, time and again, he has just said things that are completely false. They're either wholly inaccurate or very misleading. And this really does raise pretty uncomfortable questions for many of those in the West that support other aspects of his approach to things. And I just wonder what is really going on here. I mean, I've never actually seen Trump behave as erratically and as, in such a offensive manner as he has to so many people in such a short space of time. The number of people that he publicly humiliated during that long and rambling speech at Davos, it must have been awful to be in the room as a world leader. And I don't agree with a lot of those EU leaders, and plenty of disagreements we have, but I don't believe in leaders, and certainly not presidents, publicly calling out individuals, giving his private opinion of whether they're a good guy, a bad guy, what their sunglasses look like. It's so demeaning to the office that he holds. And I'm just going to say that, and it may, it is uncomfortable for the right in the UK, because we want Donald Trump to blaze a trail, to do politics differently, but sure as hell not like this.
Let's talk a little bit about politics in the UK, and someone who has done politics differently here to some degree anyway is Andy Burnham. There seems to be a Stop Andy Burnham campaign, certainly when it comes to Gordon and Denton, the constituency where Andrew Gwynn has stepped down. By-election may well happen on the 7th of May or perhaps even before then. I wonder what your reading of this situation is, Isabel. There's been so much speculation about this.
Well, my reading of the situation is that those who want to bring down Keir Starmer, and I can quite understand why they do in the Labour Party, better be careful what they wish for, because this seat that Andy Burnham may stand in is by no means a dead cert win for him. And can you imagine the chaos and the humiliation for him if he actually contested the seat and lost it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really high risk strategy, and we don't know who else might throw their hat into the ring in that seat. And if, for example, the leader of the Greens, Zach Polanski, decided to stand there, and then what happens if he does win? What happens to the mayoralty of Manchester? And I think Reform UK thinks that they've got a bit of a chance to win that mayoral, if there were a mayoral election there. So this is all fun and games, isn't it? Political fun and games, but it's quite high stakes for Andy Burnham. You're absolutely right. Isabel, thank you. That's Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks International editor. Lots to discuss in all of that. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Maybe we'll take a call on Trump in just a second. Let me read out a couple of different messages that are coming in thick and fast. Mike in Durham says, my nephew was a captain in the Royal Engineers and lost both legs after standing on an improvised explosive device. He was certainly on the front line, Mr. Trump. Well, Mike, I hear your anger coming through there, and I totally feel for you, and I totally have sympathy, of course, for your nephew, and I wish you and your family well for all that you've been through, particularly your nephew and his family. Davy Rees in West Kirby in the World says, further to my previous, have seen that Trump dodged the draft 4 times with Vietnam. You're right, he didn't serve a day in uniform. I didn't either, and I'm not being a hypocrite about that. I always have great admiration and respect for the military, and I feel there's a real lack of respect, not just for the military in the United States, but in all NATO, but particularly the UK.
particularly those 457 families and the memory of those people. Especially, I know there'll be people right now who are living with PTSD, who are living with limb loss, who are living with physical injuries because of the service they gave to this country and Afghanistan. And it is appalling, insulting and dreadful that the President has said this. I don't agree with everything he says, I don't disagree with everything he says, but on this one, he's just plain wrong. Stuart in Tunbridge Wells says, I was on holiday in Hawaii in August 1990. Just as I got there, the Gulf War blew up, but I only realised the UK and others were involved when I got back to the UK 2 weeks later. The news and attitude in the States is so insular that I'd imagine many Americans think the same as Donald Trump. Mind you, he has no excuse for ignorance, says Stuart. Dan in Kent. Afternoon, Peter. Afternoon, Dan. Trump needs to remember the main force left in Afghanistan was the British trying to keep the peace after the US bull in the China shop attitude to catch bin Laden. I have the utmost respect for the US President, but he's out of order on this one, Cardi P. Martin's in London. What do you think, Martin? You're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for the call on 0344 499 1000. Go ahead, Martin.
Evening, Peter. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I find these comments absolutely appalling. And I speak as somebody who, I've never been a diehard Trump fan, but I was sympathetic to some of his policies.
I feel the same way, Martin. I feel the same way. I don't think he's right on everything. I think he says some things and does some things that I agree with and some things that I don't. But on this, he's just bang out of order.
Yeah, and as somebody that's sympathetic to the Reform Party, I have to say, if anybody senior from the Reform Party is listening to this right now, can you please get Nigel Farage to actually say something? The silence has actually been quite deafening.
Well, there has been a statement by Reform UK, and I promise you, Martin, we'll get that statement, and I will read that out as soon as we get it after the break, Martin. But Reform UK have said something on this. I don't know if Farage has tweeted or anything about it. We can check that, but they have said something, Martin.
Well, that is good, because I'm increasingly starting to come to the view that Nigel's friendship with Donald Trump is actually going to sink him and the party.
Well, it's really interesting you saying that, Martin. Do you think from your perspective you'd be less likely to vote Reform because of that, or do you just think it's a more general thing, Martin?
If there was a general election tomorrow, I probably would still vote Reform. But the last few weeks with the whole, Donald Trump talking about wanting to invade and conquer Greenland, and this today, what he said about our troops, I really think Nigel needs to actually come out and have not so much all-out attack on Donald Trump, because that doesn't work for anybody, but certainly be critical, because it would actually make him look like a strong leader, because potentially this relationship could actually sink Nigel.
I think that's a really interesting thought, and it's one that I'm going to think about over the break. We will get that statement. I promise you I'll read it on the other side of the break, because Reform have said something. I'll check Nigel Farage's Twitter as well and see what, if anything, he has said about this. Martin, thanks for your call. Really appreciate it. More on this in just a few minutes. We'll talk to Tobias Elwood, the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, former Defence Minister, see what he thinks and what you think too. Keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Nigel Farage in Davos did condemn those comments, and we've just found the clip, and we're going to make sure that we bring that to you as soon as our people behind the scenes can turn it around. It was about a 30-second clip where Nigel Farage spoke about the bravery of our troops, certainly. I just want to remind ourselves now of what Donald Trump told Fox News, that what started all of this off.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
And Farage has tweeted, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, Donald Trump is wrong. For 20 years, our armed forces fought bravely alongside America's in Afghanistan. There is a little clip of his that I've just found online, and we'll turn that around. We'll make sure we play it out as soon as we can when we get our ducks in a row on that. I want to speak to Tobias Ellwood now. He's a former defence minister. He has served this country in uniform too, of course. Tobias, what do you make of Donald Trump's comments?
It's shocking. It's understandable that today Britain has stopped what it's doing and is reacting to this, taking stock of what our closest security ally has been saying. It's worrying on three accounts. I mean, firstly, the sheer insult to both service personnel who lost their lives and those who were injured and are still suffering from those injuries. And then there's the failure of his inner team, the people around him, his advisors, to say this is not where you should go. And he really should be better briefed about his history, our shared history. I think the most worrying thing is that he said this deliberately. He doesn't care anymore about NATO. He's just forming his own international club. He's disengaging from Europe. And this was a message to his base, political base back in the United States, to say Europe is no longer a reliable partner, and that's why we need to go it alone and take Greenland.
Certainly, when he talks about NATO, he says that he is the most important person in NATO. Certainly, America is the biggest and most important part of NATO. But the point of NATO is cooperation, isn't it? The point of NATO is to work with other countries and to have a collective defence. And there's a supreme irony in what Donald Trump says because of the Article 5 being triggered, the first time and indeed the only time in the 77 years of NATO that has been triggered. When America was attacked on 9/11, that was the trigger for other forces, Denmark, the United Kingdom and many others, to go to Afghanistan and to take part in collective action there, Tobias.
Yes, it's Article 5, the only time, I think, in its 70-odd-year history that it's been called upon. And nations across Europe, including Britain, did not hesitate. And the curious thing is that we were there. We lost hundreds of soldiers, over 40 from my own regiment, the Rifles. And then what happened is that we actually saw mission creep because of American leadership. We saw an absence of clear strategy as to where we should take it in the long term. And it was actually Donald Trump who struck that deal with the Taliban back in, I think, January 2020, that actually saw the country eventually handed back to the very insurgents that we went in to defeat. And he's glossed over all that. As I say, I think he was actually very in control about what he was saying. This is all part of a wider plan and a concerning place that we now found ourselves with, a transition of the old global order that is now dead, and we really don't know where it's going to go. So it's a real wake-up call for the rest of us to say, for the moment, America cannot be relied upon as a security ally. I fear, though, that so much damage will be done. Such a rupture will then be built, will be created between Europe and America, that even after Donald Trump, we will not be able to rectify this in the longer term.
There have been so many politicians in this country and many others as well who've condemned this. Keir Starmer has condemned this, his spokesman's condemned it. We know that Nigel Farage has condemned it. We're going to play that clip in a few minutes' time. We also know Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, has condemned it. This is what she has said.
I spoke to parents of young men who had lost their lives in Afghanistan, and I think it is a disgrace to denigrate their memory like that. Every November, we celebrate our fallen. It's not just World War I or World War II. It is more recent conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think that there is too much careless talk from President Trump. He clearly doesn't know the history of what happened. I'm somebody who believes in NATO. It is a force for good in the world. We need a strong NATO. We mustn't have these sorts of throwaway remarks that actually weaken the strong relationship between those countries in the alliance.
Kemi Badenoch speaking there. What do you make of her words, Tobias?
I think she speaks for the nation there quite rightly, and referring to November, when we pause for thought to reflect on those fallen, and we pay tribute to their pride, what they've done to serve their country, and now we see a president just run right across all that. And there's no doubt about it, the special relationship actually hinges on that relationship, that deep military relationship. It's about the bonds of the two nations, our shared values built up after the Second World War, and how we would jointly promote and defend those international standards and challenge any aggression. But it was also about how intertwined our armed forces are. We have troops that are under US command, and the US command, and we have US troops under British command. That's how entwined our two nations are. On the factory floor as well, we craft and procure our equipment together as well. And as I say, we stand together normally to defend the international laws. That's now all falling apart. I've actually called upon the Prime Minister to go further. It may be unprecedented, but the American people should recognize what their president has done. The Prime Minister should call in the US ambassador into Downing Street and make it very, very clear that Britain is owed an apology.
I totally agree with you, Tobias. Thank you for that, Tobias Elwood, their former Defence Minister. We now have that clip from Nigel Farage. Let's have a look at what he said about Donald Trump's comments.
But there was one thing that he did say that I have to take issue with. He said, NATO have never given us anything back. And I will object to that politely by saying this. When the decision was made to go into Afghanistan, we went in with America and a coalition of the willing. We stayed by America for the whole 20 years. We proportionately spent the same money as America. We lost the same number of lives as America, pro rata. And the same applies actually to Denmark and other countries too. So it's not quite fair.
Nigel Farage there speaking at Davos, and a Reform spokesman added to that, Donald Trump's comments are plain wrong. For 20 years our armed forces fought bravely alongside America's in Afghanistan. We spent the same amount of money pro rata and we suffered the same losses. These men and women deserve our undying respect. Steve has been in touch with a voice note on this. This is what Steve thinks.
Afternoon, Peter. This is Stephen Hart's ex-Grenadier Guards. Donald Trump's words, as disgusting as they were, are not even on the same page of disgusting as Keir Starmer and his Labour Party bringing in a bill to prosecute our troops. But what Starmer and them are doing to the British Armed Forces and ex-soldiers like myself is calculated. So what Trump's doing will be forgotten about with the chip papers, as they say. But what Starmer's doing will have ramifications for years. Let's not forget that.
Steve, thank you. A really sobering reminder, actually, of what's happened this week. And, it is a stupid, deeply offensive comment by Donald Trump for which he should apologise. It doesn't really change the lives of soldiers. It's caused a huge amount of hurt, of course, to people who've given so much to this country. It's a dreadful, dreadful lack of respect. Whereas what has happened with those prosecutions will materially change the lives of many people, even if it's just the worry about a knock at the door. So that was a really interesting, intelligent, sober reminder there from an ex-serviceman, from Steve there. And Steve, thank you for your service to our country. Mike has been in touch as well.
Trump, I like the man, but this was incredibly crass. The only thing that I'm taking away from this is in the knowledge, and every veteran and serving person will know this, for people that don't know, is he might want to take a look at the history of America and its successes in war. Because the fact remains that the United States of America, as good and as big as they are, have never actually won a war without the help of an allied force in its entire military history. I just feel sorry for the families and the friends that are, that have lost brothers, sisters, sons and daughters, and indeed I lost myself. But, you know, it's just something that needs to be remembered.
Mike, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Andy in Thatcham says, Trump says they've never needed help, and yet the US are the only NATO member to invoke Article 5 for help. You couldn't write it. Another person says, I'm afraid it is the Donald's way of concentrating minds for what may be to come from Russia. It was a little off and in very poor taste. I think it was a bit more than a little off, but thank you for that nonetheless. Davey says, further to my previous comments, oh yes, we've read that out before. Apologies, or I've read that out before. Becca says, so Starmer wants Trump to apologise. What about the military that served in Northern Ireland? The Starmer are now trying to screw over. What a hypocritical idiot, says Becca, echoing the thoughts of Steve there, the Grenadier Guard, who spoke to us through a voice note a second ago. David says, I like Trump more than I dislike him, but this comment about our service personnel is outrageous. That's David in Worcestershire. And Elaine says, if people think what Trump said about Afghanistan was bad, wait until they find out how our government actually treat our brave soldiers. My dad served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I would still take Trump over Starmer any day, says Elaine. Very, very strong opinions on all of this. This is my show, but it's your show too. If you want to talk about this, you let me know and we'll have that conversation. 0344 499 1000. We'll get into all the politics of this in just a second too. Kathy says, great show as always. Thank you, Kathy in West Lancashire. Here's the thing. Donald Trump dodged the draft 5 times. He never served his country once. Hypocrisy at its highest. Apparently he had bad feet or was too busy at college, says Kathy in West Lancashire. And Debbie in Lincolnshire says, my old chef Olaf Schmidt went from catering to explosive ordnance disposal. He served from 1997 to 2000. He lost his life to support NATO and protect the free world. What is Trump's problem? And the future looks black. R.I.P. Olaf, and thank you for your service, along with many other British troops. I salute you all, says Deb in Lincolnshire. Well, thank you to everybody who's getting all those comments in. We'll get many more of them between now and 7. Whatever you want to say, whatever your opinion, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So many people getting in touch. We'll get back to your calls, texts, tweets and comments. And the Prime Minister has said that Donald Trump's remarks about British troops in Afghanistan were insulting and frankly appalling, suggesting that the President should apologise. Rachel Cunliffe is the Associate Political Editor of the New Statesman. Lots of politics around today, Rachel, but just a brief reaction on these Donald Trump comments from you. It's certainly united so many of the political figures in this country and many of our viewers and listeners in terms of condemning these outrageous and totally false claims from Donald Trump.
Yeah, no debate here. Those comments from Donald Trump about NATO troops and not being close to the front line, utterly, utterly appalling. And they have, as you say, united the political parties, not just Keir Starmer. We've had Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage come out against them. All I would say is the Prime Minister's call for Trump to apologise. Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. He's not known for apologising. If he doesn't apologise, if he doesn't even privately say, I got it wrong and I shouldn't do this, I mean, it's a tough question, Rachel, but, you know, you'll be able to cope with it as you always can. What happens then?
I think of all of the tensions between the UK and the White House at the moment, this comment, like, it's insulting, it's appalling, it's very, very hurtful and offensive to the British Armed Forces. But compared to issues like tariffs, compared to Greenland, compared to what the UK government is trying to achieve when it comes to the US and Ukraine, there are multiple fronts where we are trying to make our case heard on the Trump front. So I imagine the conversations going on behind closed doors, but beyond the demand or the request for the president to apologise, I don't think we'll see more concrete political action out in the open.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll keep a close eye on that. Rachel, Andy Burnham is the big domestic political figure on everyone's lips at the moment. He's been urged to not rock the boat with a challenge to Starmer by David Lammy. We'll talk more about him in a second. But what exactly is going on here? You're the criminologist of the Labour Party. What do you think's going to happen? There are a lot of what-ifs in all of this, but clearly Keir Starmer must be feeling at least a little bit uneasy about what may happen if Andy Burnham returns to Parliament.
Oh goodness, where do we start? Okay, so this is a really difficult one for Starmer and those in and around number 10, because if they seek to block Andy Burnham from running for that seat up north, then they look petty, they look weak, and they potentially trigger a rebellion among Labour MPs, many of whom would quite like Andy Burnham to come back into Parliament. At the same time, though, if they let him stand, well, one, it's the risk of a leadership challenge to Keir Starmer. But before we even get that, we've got a by-election that Labour maybe are going to lose. We know that Reform are going to throw everything they possibly can.
What about the Greens as well? I mean, if Zach Polanski stands, that could be very interesting.
Well, he's got ties to Manchester too, and we know that he's keen to get into Westminster and get a seat himself. So you've got that by-election for the seat itself. But then if Andy Burnham stands down as Mayor of Greater Manchester, Labour then have a mayoral by-election on their hands. The cost of that would be in the hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions, when a party really is tight with resources going into those May the 7th elections. And you've also got the argument that a by-election is expensive for the local authority itself, and that money could be better spent on services. So any way you look at this, there are going to be some very unhappy people, unless Andy Burnham decides not to go for it. But I think given his comments over the past couple of months, even just this week, you know he wants it, right?
I'm not known for my subtlety, but Andy Burnham is not exactly someone known for a subtlety when it comes to being leader of the Labour Party, so I can recognise another subtle as a sledgehammer person when I see one. With Gordon and Denton, with this constituency that Andrew Gwynn is standing down from, there is at least some talk of having an all-ethnic minority shortlist, an all-women shortlist. Could that be a way around it? Or no matter what way Andy Burnham might be excluded from it, presumably that would just cause all sorts of ructions by itself.
Yeah, these are some of the rumours swirling around of ways that Labour's National Executive Committee could bar Andy Burnham from standing without explicitly saying anyone can stand apart from Andy Burnham. You know, one idea is an all-female shortlist because the Labour Parliamentary Party is still unbalanced in terms of gender. One is an idea of an ethnic minority shortlist, either of which obviously would mean that he couldn't stand. But fundamentally, I think you're right. Whichever way they sell it, if it comes down to he would like to stand and the power centre of Labour doesn't let him, then the pretext almost doesn't matter. You're still going to get a huge amount of disquiet and possibly open rebellion among Labour MPs. And also any sense that this is like a stitch up, that London is deciding the candidate up in Manchester. We've had Joe White, who is head of the group of Labour MPs, the Red Wall group of Labour MPs, say that we can't have this looking like London is just dictating the terms of the North, and I think that's significant too.
Maybe if it's an all-women shortlist, we'll have a late entry from Andrea Burnham, Andy Burnham identifying as a woman, you never know. Tell us about David Lammy in the Cabinet. He has given an interview hinting at a U-turn over jury trials. This is very controversial, especially for Carl Turner MP, who we'll be speaking to in a few minutes' time. But this could be, what, 15th, 16th U-turn that Labour has? We're still waiting for the one on pubs as well, Rachel.
Well, it depends how you count them. I think what David Lammy hinted at in that interview, he said that he was open to a conversation about this policy of restricting jury trials for all but the most serious cases. And he suggested going back to this big review that the government did last summer, Brian Levison's review into how to fix the broken courts system. Brian Levison suggested something a bit different to what the government has come forward with, an idea of a panel with a judge and 2 lay magistrates. The government's gone forward with a single judge. So this idea that maybe there's a middle way that could perhaps be a compromise compromise and be a way to fend off another rebellion from people like Carl Turner, who are very, very vocal on this issue.
Certainly, and we'll speak to Carl Turner in just a few minutes' time. Rachel, as always, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Rachel Cunliffe there, Associate Political Editor of The New Statesman. There's so much to talk about politically, but particularly with Donald Trump. That is the vast majority of messages that are coming in to me today on my screen. Gary says Trump isn't happy with Starmer's attitude towards him in America, and I think it's a typical slip by Trump, but meaning he ain't happy with Starmer and pushing to see how he reacts as the finger on the trigger over Chagos and other things. Dave in Cardiff says, I served in Afghanistan. I am appalled by what Donald Trump said. What a muppet. Trump's answer to anyone who says anything against him is to sue them for $6 million. Perhaps a law firm should now sue him on behalf of our fallen and our veterans for his untrue statements and for his disrespect. He needs a taste of his own medicine, and perhaps the money could be used to help our veterans and families of those who gave their lives, says Dave. Phil in Essex says, all Trump seems to do is alienate the whole world against America. I thought that a president's job is to create allies, not divide them. I was a strong Trump supporter during the elections, but now I hate every word that comes out of his mouth. Another one here is from a person who's saying Trump should be reminded not to share fake news as he is spreading lies about what actually happened in Afghanistan. Gillian in Worcestershire says, great show. Whilst Trump's remarks are really dreadful, please let us not forget who is really persecuting our brave servicemen and women. It is none other than Prime Minister Starmer, says Gillian. This Prime Minister is an absolute hypocrite. The President needs to apologise, of course, so we can concentrate on the real issues in this country. Mick in Wallington, Trump has made the ultimate insult for a man who ducked Vietnam. The King and William must cancel their visit to the United States. Tony Blair, who sent our badly supplied troops to help Bush, must withdraw from the Gaza board if he has any conscience. And Mark in Selby says Starmer has walked into a bear trap, sadly. Yes, he should demand an apology from the President, and yes, Trump can fire back at Starmer that if he cares so much about his soldiers, why take away their cover for incidents decades ago. Keir, bright-brained backroom staff better get an answer. Keir's bright-brained backroom staff better get an answer prepared, and not just mentioning breakfast clubs again, says Mark in Selby. Very interesting point. Thank you to all the veterans as well who have been in touch. So many people have an opinion on this, and the Prime Minister himself has said that Donald Trump's remarks about British troops in Afghanistan were insulting and frankly appalling, suggesting the President should apologise. Revulsion across the political spectrum. Lots of people want to get in with calls. We're going to take a load of calls next here on Talk Drive.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everyone who's been in touch, including Chris Shirley. He says, "Hi Peter, our servicemen and women who died or were injured in Afghanistan were our late Queen's troops. Perhaps King Charles and Starmer should consider cancelling the upcoming visit to America." Very interesting thought there. Melanie says, "Everyone needs to calm down about a silly comment Trump made, and nor should he apologise." Really? After everything the Labour Party has done to the UK and its citizens in the past 18 months, this pales in comparison. Starmer should start by apologising. I think the two things can be true at the same time. Melanie, I think you can be angry about what the government's done to the country. You can say that you wouldn't vote for them, you want someone else, whilst at the same time being absolutely appalled by Donald Trump's comments. If you're just joining the programme, maybe you just got in your car, or maybe you just got home and switched the telly on to see us, let's just remind ourselves what Donald Trump said. He was speaking to Fox News.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
I mean, that's just not true. That is just deeply offensive. And I want to bring you again what the Defence Minister Al Cairns has said. Now, he's a highly decorated veteran. He was a colonel in the Marines. You don't mess with Al Cairns when you're in Afghanistan. This is a guy who won the Military Cross. He knows what he's talking about. Yes, he's a Labour MP, and many people may discount his opinions because of that. But he was in Afghanistan. He served a number of tours. I think it was 5 tours in Afghanistan. This is what the Defence Minister Al Cairns thinks about Donald Trump's comments.
So tracking some comments made that NATO troops stayed a little off the front lines in Afghanistan and that the US has never necessarily needed us. Well, it's a real shame to hear that. The only time NATO has ever enacted Article 5 was after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, when the United States and the world rallied to the support of the US. Our agencies, our forces, our politicians, we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and responded. On Afghanistan, frankly, this is utterly ridiculous. Many courageous and honourable service personnel from many nations fought on the front line. Many fought way beyond it. I'd served 5 tours in Afghanistan. Many alongside my American colleagues. We shed blood, sweat and tears together.
Al Cairns there, who is a real hero, actually a real war hero for what he did in Afghanistan. He won the Military Cross. He's the Distinguished Service Order. He's now a minister in the Labour government, but his military service is something, no matter what you think of his politics, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, you cannot argue with his service to this country as a senior officer, someone who is rightly condemning what Donald Trump has said here. John is giving me a ring from Leeds. Tell me your thoughts. John, I think, is it true that your daughter served 2 years in Afghanistan?
Yes, she did 2 tours in Afghanistan back in when I was a teenage girl. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you know from her how tough this can be, and you know that those troops were on the front line because your daughter was in Afghanistan.
That's right. Well, she was with the Royal Signals, and she was on the some of the rescue missions that went out in the middle of the night on the helicopters to pick up wounded servicemen.
Mm-hmm. Incredibly important work, and of course there'll be many people who owe their lives to the work of her and her colleagues because they were rescued and cared for. So, John, what do you make of Donald Trump's comments here?
Well, I think it's disgraceful. I am a big Trump fan, and I wish he was in 10 Downing Street as we speak, but he needs to know that my daughter, as a teenager, held the hand of dying servicemen in a helicopter, American and British, and it's probably something that he's never going to do and never has done. So I just think he's well out of order.
You must be very proud of her, John.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm proud of every one of them that served there. And same in Northern Ireland. But there we go.
And it's a big week this week for that as well. John, what should the President do now, do you think?
I should think he should apologise to everybody and move on, but I don't think he will. But
okay,
he needs to know that there are families in England that looked after American soldiers.
Well, John, I want you to tell your daughter thank you from all our viewers and listeners for what she did. What's she up to now?
She works in London now with looking after ex-service people and things like that. So. She's a trained paramedic and that sort of thing, so
it's clearly
she came back and dedicated her life to looking after people.
Clearly a real vocation for her, John. That is wonderful. Please pass on our thanks, and what an amazing contribution she made then and continues to today. John, really, really good to talk to you. Thank you. That's John in Leeds there. Nick in Southampton says Starmer has no room to get upset about what Trump has said, apparent as his words were. Starmer is happy to pursue our troops over Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, he has an opportunity to make political points through Trump's crass comments, says Nick in Southampton. Just a little bit of breaking news just on that by-election in Gorton and Denton. That's the constituency that Andrew Gwynn, the Labour MP, was a Labour MP for. He's now been made steward and bailiff of the Manor of Northstead. There are this ludicrous, wonderful British tradition that to stop being an MP, you have to be a crown servant, and there are two ways you can do it. You can take the Chiltern Hundreds, or you can become the steward and bailiff of the Manor of Northstead, which is just a mechanism to get you out of Parliament, basically. If you want to resign, you can't really resign as an MP. You've got to do one of these wonderfully bizarre things. Actually, Michael Crick's coming on later on, the political journalist. We'll ask him about it. He knows all that stuff. So Andrew Gwynn has been made steward and bailiff of the Manor of Northstead. The Treasury has confirmed formalising his resignation from the House of Commons, triggering that by-election in Gorton and Denton. Well, what happens now is that the Chief Whip, the Labour Chief Whip, will have to move a writ, will have to say in the House of Commons that a by-election should be held. Now, the Chief Whip doesn't have to do that for some time, and I wouldn't be surprised if they want that by-election to be on the same day as the local elections, the ones that are actually happening in England on the 7th of May. So we'll see what happens there, and of course, as soon as we know what is happening with that, we will bring it to you here on Talk. But Craig from Preston is our next caller on Talk Drive. Wants to talk about Donald Trump, as so many people do. Please keep your calls coming in. Dial the number Craig dialed, 0344 499 1000. Craig, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thank you, Pete. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
You too, Craig.
Before. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a rant.
Go for it.
I've respected Donald Trump so much, but his comments have absolutely enraged me, especially with the incompetence of American military leadership during the Afghan war. I'm talking about that they allowed to happen. There's so much of it, but I'll give you one example. When they first got into Afghanistan, they quickly discovered that the only agriculture that was capable of growing in Afghanistan was opium.
Yeah.
But rather than destroy it, they allowed it to happen, knowing full well it would be exported to Europe, America, and much of everywhere else in the world. But not only that, after the takeover of Afghanistan, America quickly turned their attention to Iraq. Instead of pushing on the advances, they allowed the Taliban to then filter back in over the Hindu Kush mountains. And then, as you know, the years 2005 up to 2012 were especially brutal.
Yeah.
So,
and you see what you've told me there, that very brief 45-second history lesson, Craig, is something that Donald Trump should have heard, or at least should have known, or should have had some at least sensitivity towards, even if he didn't know those very useful and interesting facts that you've just put forward. He doesn't seem to have any appreciation of what actually happened, the sacrifice that was made by US troops, Danish troops, UK troops, troops from lots of different NATO countries, the 457 troops who died from this country. He just doesn't seem to know that. He doesn't seem to acknowledge that in any way.
I think he does know exactly what went on in Afghanistan now that he's president. And his reply will be, well, I wasn't president back then. And I say, if I take over a business, I inherit the debt.
Yeah.
And the corruption was on the same level as it was in Vietnam as well. So that's the track record of American military personnel.
Well, Craig, listen, thanks for your comments. I really appreciate that. That's Craig in Preston. Amanda says, as upsetting as Trump's thoughtless comments are, Starmer needs to buck up his ideas on how he treats our military, both past and present. It's been a big week as well. So do you think that Starmer should apologise for the Troubles Bill, for example, that would mean that our veterans will be prosecuted? Or is it Trump who needs to apologise for his just deeply offensive comments in regard to Afghanistan? Maybe both men need to apologise. What do you think? Whether you're a veteran, not a veteran, whether you're somebody who just cares about our military, or maybe you're part of a family or extended family of someone who served our country. Whatever you think, whether you've skin in the game or not, let me know. 0344 499 1000. Paul has given me a ring from Berkshire. Paul, I don't think we've spoken before. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
We haven't spoken before. I just want to say, back up something I think that's already been said, but I just think the American ambassador, the one in London,
yes,
should be summoned to number 10. And basically, in no uncertain terms, be told how we feel, and possibly sent back, thrown out of the country. I just think.
Do you think it's as serious as that? You think it's as serious as that?
I think that this is really. And the problem with all this, you get someone like Trump saying this stuff. You say it often enough, then it becomes lodged in particularly in the American people's minds, that this is actually the truth. That it's always America having to bail everyone else out. Whereas, in fact, if you look at our record, we've helped the Americans police the world, if you like, for quite a few decades now, and we've always been, as indeed have other countries as well. But and I just don't understand why he should suddenly come out with something like this.
It's a totally bizarre thing to come out with, Paul, isn't it? It's deeply offensive, it's casual, it's wrong, it's factually wrong. And when you look at some of the reactions from the Royal British Legion, for example, the service and sacrifice of British personnel in Afghanistan cannot be called into question. We condemn any comments that undermine their extraordinary contribution. 457 British personnel lost their lives in Afghanistan. Thousands more and their families now live right now, as we speak, with the lifelong physical and mental impact from service in that conflict. Those are just facts, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And as I say, the problem was he says something like this and it becomes, lodged in people's minds. I think there's a tendency with Americans to undervalue the contribution made by British forces anyway. This might seem a strange segue, but if you look at a film like, say, just for example, Saving Private Ryan, which is a great film about D-Day,
yes,
there's a remark in it about how Montgomery's dragging his feet and slowing everything up and all this kind of stuff. You often get remarks made about British forces in these films as if it's America that's fighting the war alone, and everyone else has got to catch up with them. And I just think, as I say, as I said earlier, if you keep saying all this, then it becomes people's idea of what is fact.
And that's the real danger, because people trust, whether we like it or not, people trust what Trump says. Well, if Trump said it, it must be true. People will think that.
The other thing I'd say, I'm very disappointed about all this. I, like a lot of people, I took Donald Trump to be a mixed bag, but I actually liked a lot of the things he's done. He's been very decisive, and he's a style of leadership that you look at and you think, if only could we had some of that over here, this side of the pond. But then you listen to when he comes out with stuff like this, who's advising this guy? Because they need to tell him, the old bit of advice, before open mouth, fully engaged brain. Before opening mouth.
I was an advisor to politicians, and sometimes you can only advise so far. Sometimes they just say what they're going to say, unfortunately, Paul. But Paul, thank you. Paul from Woolhampton in Berkshire. Appreciate that. Do ring me again, Paul. It's really good to talk to you on that matter. And there's so many people getting in touch. Andy in Scarborough says, while President Trump is wrong, that is not in doubt. But Starmer and the rest have been jumping in the graves of everyone who fought for this country, not just Afghanistan, but both wars, because they're neglecting to protect the citizens of this country by not protecting our borders and allowing whoever thinks differently, whoever thinks differently is deluding themselves, says Andy in Scarborough. And Gary says, does Starmer really care about the military and veterans? If he does, he must retract the bill this week and pull Shagos as well. He won't. He is an utter disgrace to represent us British patriots. Very interesting. I did not expect so much anger against Starmer as well as Trump. Whatever you think, let me know. 0344 499 1000. Plenty more comments to come in the next hour.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 5 o'clock. This is Talk Drive, and there is outrage about what President Donald Trump has said about servicemen and women who served in Afghanistan. He said they kept away from the front lines. That is a lie. That is untrue. 457 servicemen and women from the UK Army died in Afghanistan. They fought bravely and with great distinction to help that country. Donald Trump has been widely condemned across the political spectrum. Should he now apologise? What should happen? Lots of people getting in touch today. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Should President Trump apologise for his Afghanistan comments? Let me know what your thoughts are on that. We're talking as well about jury trials. Carl Turner, the Labour MP, is going to join me in just a second because there's a chink of light there. Maybe there could be another U-turn from the Labour government on it. We'll talk about Andy Burnham as well. We know now that there will definitely be a by-election there because Andrew Gwynn, who was the MP for that particular constituency, he has stood down. We'll talk about a major shake-up of the police. Peter Blexley will talk to us about that. Heathrow ending its 100 millilitre rules, big changes there. And of course the sport this hour as well, as we do most days in the 5 o'clock hour. So much to discuss on all of this. I want your comments. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to get on the air. You can also text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, less than a minute please, 0344 499 1000. Same number for calls, same number for WhatsApp text messages. And actually, one of those text messages from Dave in Cardiff is a very, very interesting one, where he says, if any of our politicians said what Trump said, we would be calling for them to resign and they would be hounded by the media until they did. Trump should not be able to get away with the utter rubbish he has shared this week, says Dave in Cardiff. What do you think? Do you agree with Dave? Maybe you think that Starmer is actually a villain in some of this as well. Some people have been saying that. There's loads to discuss here on Talk Drive between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us. Well, we're going to talk to Carl Turner in a second, mainly about jury trials and what David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, has said about that. That's the reason we've invited Carl Turner on. I'll get a quick answer from him, certainly, on our main story today on what Donald Trump says as well. I'm going to play you 5 clips before I do that. Various people. This has been absolutely condemned right across the political spectrum. The Prime Minister himself saying the remarks were insulting and frankly appalling. These are the remarks he's talking about. This is what Donald Trump said.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
I mean, that's just nonsense. That is just not true. Al Cairns is a defence minister. He's also a war hero. He won the Military Cross and the Distinguished Service Order. Colonel Al Cairns is now a defence minister. Whatever you think of his politics, he's a hero to this country. This is what he said.
So tracking some comments made that NATO troops stayed a little off the front lines in Afghanistan and that the US has never necessarily needed us. Well, it's a real shame to hear that. The only time NATO has ever enacted Article 5 was after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, when the United States and the world rallied to the support of the US. Our agencies, our forces, our politicians, we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and responded. On Afghanistan, frankly, this is utterly ridiculous. Many courageous and honourable service personnel from many nations fought on the front line. Many fought way beyond it. I'd served 5 tours in Afghanistan. Many alongside my American colleagues. We shed blood, sweat and tears together.
That's the Labour voice and someone who knows this because he was in Afghanistan for 5 tours. Let's hear the Conservative voice. Kemi Badenoch reacting to this.
I spoke to parents of young men who had lost their lives in Afghanistan, and I think it is a disgrace to denigrate their memory like that. Every November, we celebrate our fallen. It's not just World War I or World War II. It is more recent conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think that there is too much careless talk from President Trump. He clearly doesn't know the history of what happened. I'm somebody who believes in NATO. It is a force for good in the world. We need a strong NATO. We mustn't have these sorts of throwaway remarks that actually weaken the strong relationship between those countries in the alliance.
Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has also reacted. This is what he has said in Davos.
But there was one thing that he did say that I have to take issue with. He said, NATO have never given us anything back. And I will object to that politely by saying this. When the decision was made to go into Afghanistan, we went in with America and a coalition of the willing. We stayed by America for the whole 20 years. We proportionately spent the same money as America. We lost the same number of lives as America, pro rata. And the same applies actually to Denmark and other countries too. So it's not quite fair.
Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey has also reacted.
Well, Trump's comments are appalling and they're insulting to all those British veterans, the soldiers who lost their lives, the soldiers who came back with life-changing injuries and all their families and friends. But people know I've regularly criticised Donald Trump for so much and I question his character. But I also question the character of British politicians who've been supporting Donald Trump. Nigel Farage called him the bravest man he'd ever met. A man who's dodged military service 5 times. I think Nigel Farage's character is on the line, along with Donald Trump's.
I mean, this is not about Nigel Farage at the moment anyway. The day is the day to focus on these comments. But listen, that's what Ed Davey said. Carl Turner is the MP for Kingston upon Hull East, Labour MP. Carl, as promised, we're going to talk about jury trials very, very soon. But I just want to get one answer, perhaps two, from you on this. What do you think of what Donald Trump said?
Well, I think it's ugly and it's uninformed, frankly. We have the privilege as members of Parliament and elected representatives of laying a wreath each November. Hull is a particularly big recruiter for the military. When I lay that wreath, I think of those men and women, in fact, who've lost their life on the front line, especially in Afghanistan, alongside American troops. I think it's grotesque. I think, frankly, the mask is slipping from Donald Trump's face now. He's been exposed for the bigot that he actually is.
What should happen now? What should Keir Starmer do?
Well, I think Keir Starmer has been quite strong on this. He's called him out. I mean, look, anybody would look at that and think it was grotesque. We know, as members of Parliament, about loss of life in military action, and that's why if we are required as parliamentarians, we take it incredibly seriously if we're asking our military to go to wars. So I think it's incredibly, it's just offensive and it's ugly. And I think the Prime Minister, I think the Leader of the Opposition, I think even Nigel Farage and the Leader of the Lib Dems is absolutely spot on to call this out. But what Ed Davey shouldn't do, perhaps, is criticise the Prime Minister, because we do need to work with the US. That's the only caveat I would add.
We will, of course, talk about that throughout the programme. If you want to add to all the comments that have happened, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. But Carl, we've talked before on jury trials. This is something you, as a barrister, as an MP, feel incredibly strongly about. David Lammy, now the Justice Secretary, perhaps opening the door to a U-turn on this. He says he's open to a conversation on alternative options to the plan, but insisted the government has to tackle a backlog of 80,000 cases. He's been speaking to the BBC and he said, on your criticism specifically, Carl has got a principal objection. He was a barrister. It's always sad when you see friends go through the lobbies, and he went through the lobby with Robert Jenrick, and you know he's being friendly to Robert Jenrick, and that frustrates and depresses me. I mean, you said memorably in the interview that I spoke to you on a few days ago that you thought you needed to take a bath because you'd been through the lobby with Robert Jenrick. Is that a fair comment from David Lammy to make, do you think?
Well, I think it's a fair comment for David to make. Look, he's annoyed with me for attacking his policy proposal. But the reality is he shouldn't think I'm being personal in attacking David. I'm not. I'm saying the policy is impossible. It won't work. It can't work. It's unfair. It's unworkable. It's unpopular. And it's unjust. Everything that we shouldn't be doing as a Labour Party is what David Lammy has been suggesting. So I'm a bit disappointed that David has not picked the phone up to me, Peter, to be honest. He's got my mobile number. I texted him a couple of days ago and said, let's get half an hour together to talk about how we get you out of this situation you've got yourself into, because that's what I think he's done. He's got himself into a situation where now egos have taken over. The reality is this policy can't work. And even Leveson's idea of a judge sitting with two magistrates is impossible, practically speaking.
Has he replied? Has he replied to your text message, Carl?
He's ignored my text messages, Peter, which is disappointing because David Lammy is a friend of mine. He was. I've not tried to be personal about things. I've just simply pointed to the truth of the matter.
So he says he's open to a conversation, but he doesn't seem to be open to a conversation with you, Carl.
He's not open to a conversation with me, clearly, Peter, which is worrying because the truth of it is I am leading the rebellion on this. I've got at least, I think now, 60 MPs who are determined to vote this legislation down if it ever sees the light of day. I'm not making it up. I can say to whips what the people are. If those members of parliament are prepared to be named, I can name them to the whips. I've got a rebellion which is, at the moment, 60 MPs strong. We had a Bar Council meeting in Parliament last week. It was attended by 17 MPs. Frankly, I'm not proud of the fact that I've not met most of them, but I've not seen most of them. They were elected in 2024. I don't know them by name particularly. I introduced myself and said hello, thanked them for coming along, but that was 17 MPs that weren't on my list. So the number is growing. We know that this policy won't work. Brian Leveson's policy is not going to work either. So what David Lammy needs to do is get round the table with the Bar Council, the Criminal Bar Association, the Law Society, circuit leaders, and indeed the Lady Chief Justice to find out what they can do to cut the backlog. I've got the answers for them. I'm not being clever dicky about it. I've got the answers because I'm interested in the criminal justice system and I've been since I've been an MP. David needs to speak to people who know what they're talking about.
David Lammy says the proposals were necessary to save the criminal justice system. Does he not know what he's talking about?
I'm afraid to tell you, the Institute for Government came out with a report just this last week, which was published, I think, in The Guardian, which said Brian Leveson's suggestion that it would be a 20% efficiency saving under Brian's proposal, which was the judge with two magistrates, is not true. It's more like 2%. Now, let's bank 2% if that's the saving, the efficiency saving. That means a trial that's in front of a jury would take 5 days if it's going to take 5 days. A trial in front of a judge and two wingers, magistrates, would take 5 days, and a jury trial would take 5 days. However, it would take longer than the 5 days because the judges then got to give reasons for the decision. It's not a jury coming back, 12 anonymous men and women, good and true citizens of the country, deciding the facts of the case and deciding the innocence or guilt of somebody who's accused. It's the judge determining the decision. The judge then has to give the reasons, and then you can have somebody like me, Peter, poring over the judgment and finding the points to appeal on. It can't work. Brian Leveson was wrong. David Lammy is wrong. We must stop this daft idea.
We've just heard from our colleagues at The Times. This has literally just happened. I was going to ask you about Andy Burnham anyway, but The Times is reporting that Angela Rayner is going to defy Keir Starmer and publicly back allowing Andy Burnham to stand as an MP tomorrow. What do you think of Andy Burnham standing as an MP for that constituency that Andrew Gwynn has just vacated?
Well, look, I'm not surprised that Angela Rayner would be speaking out and suggesting that the idea of blocking him is wrong. The Labour Party rulebook could block him because there are two mechanisms. One is parity, i.e. there's not enough women in Parliament. I think there's a few less women than there are men. So that might be a good reason and a fair reason to block him in a by-election. But that rule only applies, Peter, in a general election, not a by-election. The second point that could block him on is a regional mayor would need the requirement of the NEC to approve his candidacy because he's actually elected as a mayor. So they could block him on that. My advice to Keir Starmer, and let me tell you, I've been texting Keir, not on this subject, but we're texting each other daily, most of the time, is to say to Keir, Listen, if he wants to stand, let him stand. You don't have to be fearful. The guys in the back room at number 10 Downing Street, huddled around photocopying machines, need to calm it down to a frenzy. There is no leadership contest.
Is Starmer in contact with you? I mean, David Lammy's not replying to your messages. Is Starmer replying to your messages?
If I texted Keir Starmer this evening, I guarantee you he'd text me back as soon as he possibly could. He might be travelling, he might be doing something else, he might be busy dealing with world problems and actually domestic problems as well. But Keir Starmer will always give me the courtesy of replying to me. That's the relationship I have with him. He knows that I've got a principled position on this jury stuff. And I suspect Keir Starmer, Peter, wishes that I'd not been so forceful and public about the fact that it's the balmiest idea that any party could ever come up with. But he's not blanking me, isn't Keir Starmer?
What's he said to you about Andy Burnham?
He's not mentioned Andy. I've not mentioned it to him, but he's aware, I suspect, of the fact that I'm saying Burnham should be entitled to stand if he wishes. Look, let me just say this to you. The Labour Party exists for one reason, really. That's to get people elected to Parliament so that we can govern. Local elections and council representatives are important as well, but our purpose is to govern so that we can change lives in the way that we think is best. That's the truth of us, right? If Andy Burnham is the best candidate, that constituency Labour Party should be able to choose the best candidate to win the seat. That should be our only priority in this. Win the seat, get him into Parliament if that's what he wants to do, and then if there's a problem, we speak to him. We don't have to have this figment of the imagination of people that all of a sudden he's going to waltz into Parliament 15 minutes thereafter he's going to be the leader of the Labour Party. He's not going to be the leader of the Labour Party. Listen, I've had my rows with Keir, publicly and privately. I'll tell Keir Starmer now, and anybody who's listening, I'm not going to be trying to get rid of Keir Starmer as the leader of the Labour Party. I voted for him in the first place. I still support him now. I want the party to change, and I want it to start listening to people like me on issues that we understand and know about. Hillsborough was an issue the other day. They've got to start listening to us and stop ignoring the backbenchers. But I've got no problem with Keir Starmer leading the country to the next general election and beyond if the electorate decide to elect us as a government. At the moment, the polls suggest that we're going to lose badly.
Doesn't sound to me as if you're the rumoured MP joining Reform UK, Carl.
I couldn't join Reform UK, I couldn't join the Tories, I couldn't join the Lib Dems, and I couldn't join the Greens. Listen, to me, politics it was force-fed to me from being a kid, actually. I got up in the morning, I couldn't stand the Tories. I go to bed on a night, I still can't stand the Tories. If I'm unfortunate enough to need a wee during the night, I remind myself how much I hate the Tories. And that's the truth of me. There is absolutely no chance of me ever joining any other party. I'll go to the country in 2029 if it happens then, and I'll say to the electorate, I've done my best. If you don't like it, you know what to do. And I tell you something now, Peter, if they boot me out of Eastall, I'll shake the hand of the person who is elected and say, good luck. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. That's politics, and that's the job we do. We're in one day and we're out the next. I'm not frightened of that, but I tell you something now, I won't change my principles. I'm in love with the Labour Party. It's the nearest thing I've got to a religion, is the Labour Party. I'm going nowhere. And I suspect Keir Starmer's not going anywhere as leader of the Labour Party, frankly.
Very interesting. Carl, thank you. That's Carl Turner there, the Labour MP for Kingston upon Hull East. What do you think of what he said there? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We know that Angela Rayner, according to the Times, is going to defy Keir Starmer, publicly back, allowing Andy Burnham to stand as an MP tomorrow. Lots of people getting in touch about the story about Donald Trump and his comments on Afghanistan. Anne says, Peter, our own government disrespect every single citizen of this country on a daily basis. Sarah said, it wouldn't surprise me if Trump is just saying stuff to get a rise out of Starmer. I think he is seeing how weak Starmer is and then will strike with his next move. Trump isn't everyone's cup of tea, but he is in an era of pushing boundaries. Mary in County Down in Northern Ireland says, the media and political frenzy, I include talk in this, the frenzy of outrage over Trump's untrue, stupid and disrespectful remarks is another convenient distraction from the Iranian regime's huge-scale slaughter of its own people while the world looks away. Another day, more confected hysteria, Mary believes, over Trump's brainless rambling. Politicians and the media, and I include talk in this, appear incapable of prioritising important events. Governments are letting Iran away with mass murder and torture, and the media are letting political leaders get away with inaction and disinterest. It is shameful. Also, is there the slightest possibility of some proper analysis of Trump's latest daft utterance? It is a blip, not the end of time, for goodness sake. That is Mary in County Down. Thank you to the person who says, my son was in Afghanistan and he wasn't with NATO forces, he was with the British Army and under command of the British Army. And all the news clips, I never saw any blue berets, there were none. Another person says, yes, we need to evaluate Trump by what he does and certainly not by what he says. Brian says, I think it's about time Europe got together and put Trump in his place, and by doing that I mean make it abundantly clear to him that if he continues on this route, every single American ambassador, every single American base will be removed from Europe. It's about time he had a short, sharp shock and he's put back in his cage. That is from Brian. Well, thank you for all those remarks. Certainly we will keep discussing this. We'll discuss what you want to discuss, because this is your show as well as my show. 0344 499 1000. Lots to talk about in the next segment. We're going to talk about the number of police forces to be cut in a major shake-up. Peter Blexley will be with us and he'll give us his view on that. Stay with us here on Talk.
Couldn't believe when I heard this report yesterday that the man could be frankly so stupid and so outrageous as to make those comments. I understand that many advisors on the British side who heard about this before he uttered those words, and as you said, we lost 457 of our own young people fighting a very gritty campaign up until 2014. I was talking with my own middle son just about an hour ago who did a tour in Afghanistan as well as previously in Iraq, and he says, actually, Dad, the man's completely mad.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, just another statement we've received from Help from Heroes, from Mark Elliott. He's a founding member of Help from Heroes, which does brilliant work, of course, for so many veterans who are living with physical and mental injuries, and also those who want to get back into the workplace. There's a load of stuff that Help from Heroes does. Great organisation. I know personally, says Mark Elliott, how bravely our armed forces fought on the front lines in Afghanistan and indeed Iraq, many paying the ultimate price. I visited and sat by the bedsides of young men and women with the most horrendous battlefield injuries sustained in the fight for ongoing freedom and security, not only for the people of Afghanistan, but for the whole of the Western world. Their sacrifice is the very reason we were established. Our team worked tirelessly to prove critical support to our wounded from the moment their medical evacuation arrived back on British soil. Today our team continues to support Afghanistan Afghan veterans and all who are affected by their service to our nation, who continue to pay a mental and physical toll, a price they were willing to pay for ongoing security and safety. Well, Peter Blexley is with me now to talk about the number of police forces to be cut in a major shake-up. But Peter, just before we do that, I know you have you can comment on all sorts of different issues, not just policing issues. You're a sought-after commentator on all sorts of things. On this big political row, we've been talking about our main story today. I'm interested to hear your view on what Donald Trump has said here. Is this, as one of our texters said, just a blip and something we should see as just something he said that was a stupid thing, but there are bigger issues at play? Or is it something we should really be concentrating on? What do you think?
Donald Trump's superpower is his unpredictability. And that's what keeps all his opponents and often his allies wrong-footed, because they simply don't know what direction he'll travel next or what he's going to say on any given day. This needs to be put into context alongside so much of his unpredictability. I'm sure that if Donald Trump had sat down with a very senior member of our armed forces who had clearly explained to him the extent, the sacrifice, the courage, the bravery, the heroism of our armed forces, he wouldn't have said such a thing.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your comments on that. Let's talk about the story we invited you on about. This is the number of police forces in England and Wales to be cut in a major shake-up. We know there is one police force in Scotland and there's one in Northern Ireland, but there are 43 right across England and Wales. Now we're talking about 12 mega forces. This is the current model of 43 forces, bureaucratic and waste money, each force running its own headquarters, management teams and backroom staff. Would cutting it to 12 be the answer? What are the sort of pros and cons of this? What do you think, Peter?
Well, let's look at the positives first, if we may. These forces, these super forces, as some people are calling them, would have huge purchasing power when it came to uniforms, vehicles, IT systems, any kind of equipment, even down to the desks and chairs. So in that regard, I think they'd be able to make considerable savings, which would be a good thing. On the downside of things, many senior police officers who actually sit behind desks, and that's about the extent of what they do, don't have any real experience of the front line. They got away from the rough and tumble of policing as quickly as promotion would allow them to. And consequently, they have a disconnect from what their frontline officers want and what the public want. Frontline officers do not want more centralisation, because already thousands of police working hours and millions of pounds in fuel is wasted by ferrying prisoners, arrested people, to police stations far, far away, because so many have been closed down and there just aren't the custody suites available. Centralisation has its place for certain things, but in policing can be very, very damaging. So we need to be very much aware of that.
It's certainly something that would change things dramatically. So much crime, of course, happens across the boundaries. So much crime is online now. Fraud is the biggest crime that the police look into, the most reported crime. And we know that you can have someone sitting in Liverpool who defrauds someone in London, someone in Glasgow, someone in Paris, and it crosses so many boundaries. Is even the idea of a county or area police force an outdated one? Maybe it should just be Police England, just as there is Police Scotland. Or would that be totally impractical, do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think England is too big to follow the Police Scotland model. The police in Scotland had 8 police services before 2013, when those 8 were merged to create Police Scotland. And that, of course, is an organisation that has been beset with problems, most notably at the moment that they've got one Deputy Chief Constable suspended and another one has just recently been found to lie to the family of a murder victim. That organisation is far from perfect. If we strip away some of the bureaucracy, if we decentralise so much of the organisations, that will help. But the real rot in British policing lies in successive generations of senior police officers disconnected from the public, disconnected from their front line, and who will cowardly cave in to whatever organisation shouts the loudest.
Listen, thank you for that. I also want to ask you just about UKIP's Tower Hamlets march. This is counter-protest fears mean that it's been banned by police. Tower Hamlets is obviously a predominantly Muslim area. There are quite a few Islamists who live there. UKIP wanted to do 2 marches through it. Just talk us through this, Peter, and what your thought is. Did the police do the right thing by banning the marches? What do you think?
It is the public's job to maintain law and order, but it is also the police's job to facilitate protest, marches, gatherings, and the such like. What's clearly happening now, and we've seen this very, very clearly in Birmingham, and we're seeing it in other places, is that if you gather together as a mob, if you are intimidating, if you are frightening, then in all likelihood the police will cave in, unless, of course, your politics happens to be somewhat to the right of centre, and you want to preserve and cherish the values that made this nation once upon a time the envy of the world. In that case, you will be come down upon like a ton of bricks.
Peter, we have a message from Sandy in Lincoln who says, can you please say to Peter Blaxley, my husband and I really enjoyed a show in Nottingham. I can see The Makings of a Murderer is behind you there. That is your show that you're travelling around the country at the moment doing. Where do you speak to us from at the moment, Peter?
I'm on the stage at the beautiful Scarborough Spa, a Victorian theatre, and it's an absolute joy and a privilege to be performing here tonight. Strangely, there are still some tickets left. So brave the wind, get down to the Scarborough Spa Theatre tonight, and I will happily entertain you for a couple of hours.
Excellent stuff. Well, I've seen some really, really good reviews of The Makings of a Murderer, which is Peter Blaxley's show. He's travelling around the country at the moment with it. For the meantime, Peter, as always, thank you. Peter Blaxley, former Metropolitan Police Detective, speaking to us from Scarborough. And the next time we speak to him, he'll be somewhere else because he's travelling around for the guts of a year, actually. He's going to Northern Ireland at some point. I hope to go to his show there when I see my parents. Lots of people getting in touch about Trump. We will get back to that in a second, I promise. We're going to talk about travel in a second because Heathrow has ended the 100 millilitre liquid rule. Simon Calder will speak to us in just a moment after the break. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's talk about those really annoying liquid rules. I remember the Heathrow bomb plot back in 2006, I think it was, and I was travelling to America at the time, and that's when they brought in all those liquid rules. And Simon Calder now telling us that 20 years on, at least at Heathrow, they're ending. Simon, what's the latest on all of this? Thanks for joining us today. Simon Calder, the travel correspondent of The Independent.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Peter. As from today, at London Heathrow, you can leave all your liquids in the hand luggage along with all your various devices. So no more of these bags where you've got to have everything into a 1 litre clear plastic bag, 100 millilitres maximum. You've got a bottle of water, you want to have a drink for your flight, then you're perfectly legal to take that through. And this is really good news. It's the biggest airport anywhere in the world to have brought in these new rules. However, it is just going to sow yet more confusion. So, for instance, let's take a tour of the top 4 UK airports. So Heathrow, along with Gatwick, are now anything you want to take up to 2 litres, and you try and take 2 litres stuff in your cabin baggage, you'll know about it. That's Gatwick and Heathrow will allow you to do that. But the other 2 big UK airports, which are Stansted and Manchester, no, it's still 100 millilitres. And if you decide, oh, well, I'm going out of Heathrow, so I don't care what they do in Stansted or Manchester, well, bear in mind that coming back from wherever you're going, the chances are that they will have the old rules still in place. I've done a complete survey of the top 10 European airports, and the only ones which have got the new machines and are operating them with the 100 milliliter rule taken away are Rome and Dublin. Everywhere else, Amsterdam, Paris, Madrid, Frankfurt, they're all on the old school rules.
I can understand, Simon, why different European countries have their own rules. Part of why we Brexited was to have our own rules. But in the UK, why is there not a clear policy where all UK airports do the same thing? And actually, if you're a security officer, I know that's a job you used to do, Simon, back in the day, that can be confusing for them as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're working at a particular airport,
yeah, you'll know the policy there.
Yeah, but it's super confusing for all the passengers, of course. And the whole idea was, if you go back to 2019, you might recall there's a Prime Minister called Boris Johnson, and he told us it was all going to be fine, and that by 2022, every single airport in the country would have these new machines. The 100 milliliter rule would go completely, and we'd all be the happiest people in Europe. Well, funnily enough, that didn't happen. And so we have been left with this absolute mess. It's partly because these fantastic new machines, you'll know the ones I mean, they look like absolutely giant freezers.
Yeah, I've been through them, yeah.
Based on medical technology. But the thing is, they're not that good yet. And so therefore the whole idea is that they can have a look at a bottle of water and say, that's a bottle of water. Or they can analyze its molecular structure and say, hang on, we're going to take a closer look at that. But the thing is, they're giving lots of false positives, so that there's particular brands. You talk to security staff and they say, oh yeah, this brand of hairspray or whatever, this brand of something else, or even bananas and books, they can give false signals and people's bags will be pulled. And then conversely, that's annoying if you're a passenger, but conversely, it could also mean that they're letting stuff through that they don't want to get through.
We certainly don't want that. Will we get to a point, do you think, Simon, where all of this is sorted out, and when, I suppose, is that point?
Well, okay, we're talking now a year after when the liquids rules that you remember so well, it was absolutely chaotic that August.
It was chaotic.
Nearly closed down.
Totally chaotic.
Because people, the systems just suddenly couldn't cope with everybody having to check everything in. Well, we were told it was just a temporary movement there. We've then had the International Air Transport Association saying it will be fine, just give us till 2025, and you won't even know you're being scanned. You'll just walk down a corridor. It'll be really easy. There'll be somebody waiting at the end, and they'll just, gently take you aside if there's anything. But most people who just won't even know they've been scanned.
Yeah, well, that'll be very interesting too, yeah.
Exactly. That's where we're trying to get to, but I give it probably another 15 years. So good luck, everybody. Best assumption, wherever you're going, stick to 100 millilitres.
It's just the safest way. Simon, just before you go, I know you've got to go in just a second. How on earth were you a security officer? Security officers have to be stern, unsmiling, generally not very pleasant people. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met. How were you a security officer?
Peter, they're good people. They're working.
I know they're good. I know they're good people. I know they're good people that keep us safe, but they're generally quite stern people. And you're many things, but you're not stern.
Oh well, look. Frankly, this was Crawley, because I was born just beside Gatwick Airport in Crawley, and they frankly would take anybody in those days.
I'm sure that's not true.
They've got a bit more sophisticated since then, a bit more demanding.
Simon, thank you. That's Simon Calder there, travel correspondent for The Independent. And David Litchfield has pointed to Birmingham Airport stopping the 100 milliliter rule some time ago. I've certainly gone through Heathrow. It's really weird going through different airports. If you do that, you maybe go on holiday to an airport you haven't gone to before, and they're saying, oh, you do have to bring them out, you don't have to bring them out, you have to take boots off, you don't have to take boots off, belts, things out of your backpack or not, your liquids, sometimes you need to take them out, laptops, iPads and things like that. It is definitely very, very confusing. And Amanda says, and the ending of liquid rules for flights is beyond belief. Do these ignorant people truly believe the threats are no longer there? It's unbelievable. Says Amanda, well, it's not that the threats aren't there, it's that they're better detecting those threats. And as Simon was saying in that interview there are all sorts of ways of seeing even the molecular structure of some of those things that are in your bag. So it's getting more sophisticated, but they do care about our security and they do want us to be safe on those planes. Lots of people getting in touch about Donald Trump. Let's just remind ourselves what he said.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little off the front lines.
Gary in Belfast says, all right, Peter, great show. I like Trump, or well, I did, but as a veteran myself, I think he was well out of order. He disrespected the UK. We lost 457 troops and thousands more injured mentally and physically. Slightly different view from your city, Gary, Belfast. Another person from Belfast has been in touch, Benny, who says, people have utterly lost all reason over Trump. A texter texted you, Peter, calling for European countries to close down US military bases because an odious president has yet again said something insulting. We revere our fallen servicemen and women, rightly so, and we hold our armed forces personnel in very high regard. It doesn't matter what Trump says. Our military works very closely and effectively with US forces all over the world. Literally nothing has changed in that very good relationship. Peter is in Dorset. I wonder what you think about that. Does it matter what Trump says because our forces are working together, Peter, or should we take him seriously at his word, Peter?
I think that he should have been advised, if he was very unhappy with what's going on in Europe, which he's very unhappy about the way the Europeans are behaving, he should have been advised to say something else, that he wanted to have a poke at any forces or anybody else in Europe, to be frank. But sadly, the wonderful forces that we've got and the poor people, the poor men who died, I'm afraid tonight are twice, not only by what Donald Trump said, but Keir Starmer. How can they possibly listen to what Keir Starmer has to say when he is completely decimating and has no idea about how to gauge us up in the military for coming years? They must wonder, what on earth were they fighting for? A man allowing all these immigrants in, changing the fabric of the country, and they have to listen to him preaching about what Donald Trump has said. It is the most outrageous situation on both sides. First of all, Trump not being advised and should know to, as you said before, engage brain first. That was the first thing. The second thing is that it is quite extraordinary to listen to somebody who calls himself the Prime Minister talking about anybody in the military when how many times have we been told about upping the amount of money that should be put into the forces, what he's doing, the poor people.
I think all of that makes sense to me, Peter. There's another person in this as well, which I actually think, when you look at the legacy of Afghanistan, to me, the even greater crime, actually, is not necessarily what Trump has said, although I think it's abhorrent, I think it's dreadful, it's totally to be condemned. I totally disagree with him. He is not speaking the truth, he is not speaking sense, and he shouldn't have said it. His predecessor, Joe Biden, was the one who gave the go-ahead for the withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was absolutely botched. Many people were left behind, many people still there, including people who provided interpretation services, people who helped our servicemen and women still there and can't get out. That was botched badly by our government. It was botched badly by Biden. And I think if we are going to look back on that period, as we should, and we should evaluate it many times, of course, there's so many people who did great things and there are leaders who did very bad things, and I would include Biden in that. I wonder what you think about that, Peter.
I completely agree that there are mistakes made all over the place, but right on our doorsteps, only yesterday, we have got a neighbourhood where the military barracks are being turned in for migrants. They should be filled with people being trained for our armed services.
You're absolutely right. At Crowborough, a military training camp. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, Peter, a bit more actually, because the protests continue there. And on my weekend shows, which are between 10 and 12:30 tomorrow and 10 and 1 on Sunday, we're going to continue talking about that. Peter, thanks for your comments. Really appreciate them. That's Peter in Dorset there. Labour's candidate applications are now open for the Gorton and Denton by-election, they say. Andy Burnham has until the end of Sunday to decide if he's going to stand. We will let you know what he decides, when he decides it. Loads to come, including the sport. We're going to talk to Mike Anstead from The Sun in just a second here on Talk Drive. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Mike in Wigan says, if you look at casualties by country in Afghanistan, he has a point, but not about British involvement, not to diminish any soldier's death. Well, Mike, I don't think I agree with that, because if you look at deaths in Afghanistan by population, US first, Denmark second, UK third, if you know, as a proportion, exactly actually what Nigel Farage was saying a little bit earlier on. David Litchfield says, I detest Labour and their policies as their MP detests the Conservatives, but by goodness, that man is a proper politician. Talking about Carl Turner, I wouldn't vote for him, but that is a prime example of how a politician should be. Good on him. Stick to your values and argue against the party if you think they're wrong. Carl Turner, not mincing his words, and very interesting on that particular issue. We're going to take a little break from politics and world affairs now to talk about sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Mike Anstead is here, the head of content for sport at The Sun. Good to see you, Mike. You well?
Yep, good, thanks, Peter.
Tell us about a surprise possible transfer cropping up this morning. Who are Spurs trying to sign?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a left field one, but they're going for Andy Robertson, the Liverpool left-back, long-serving Liverpool left-back, who's lost his place this season to Milos Kerkez. So he's a free agent in the summer. Spurs were looking to bring him in there, but because of an injury to Ben Davies and doubts over Udogi's sort of fitness at the moment, they're accelerating the move to bring him in this month. So it looks like it's going to go through. I don't think we'll see any movement over the next couple of days with the games going on, but it wouldn't surprise me Monday whether Robertson's on his way to London to get it all done. So he admitted recently that he's lost his place in the team at Liverpool. He's still a key player in the dressing room because he's so experienced, won the title with them. But he says no player should ever be happy sat on the bench, so he clearly wants minutes, and this is in the countdown to the World Cup, where hopefully he's going to be out there with the Scotland squad eyeing glory over there.
And tell us about Chelsea as well. They've confirmed their star man is happy at the club, Cole Palmer. Happy as Larry?
Well, this is what Liam Rossini is claiming. I'd like to see Cole Palmer on record and say that he's very, very happy at Chelsea. So, look, we've got to go by what the manager's claiming today. He says his man's happy, but we don't get the impression he is. So the last game against Brentford, he scored, didn't really celebrate, walked down the tunnel straight at full time, didn't really acknowledge anyone around him. There's this understanding behind the scenes that he's from Manchester originally. He's kind of pining for Manchester a little bit. He's still got his friends and family up there. If the chance to return to Man City or even join Man United, who is the team he supported growing up, if that came up, that would certainly change the situation. So there's a bit of intrigue around Cole Palmer at the moment. Obviously, he's star player for Chelsea. It's not quite happening for him on the pitch. He's certainly not hitting the heights he has
When you
done.
have to say someone is happy at a club, it's a bit like saying, I really believe that person's very competent at their job. You know, it's not great when you have to express full confidence in someone.
Liam Rossini needs him to be happy to keep him. Liam Rossini wants him to stay, but I'd be more convinced if Cole Palmer was sat there today saying, I'm really happy. So let's see if he comes out and says anything over the next few days.
Crystal Palace manager Oliver Glasner wants to keep his striker. What's the latest with Mateta?
Yeah, so Palace are in a bit of a mess at the moment. Glasner's leaving at the end of the season. They've sold Mark Gay to Man City, and Mateta's wants to get out in the January transfer window as well. He's saying, look, I want to keep him. He's going to carry on playing him rather than leave him out, which does happen with other players. But he has said, look, if I get a replacement, then he can go. So look, there's Palace who won the FA Cup 9 months ago. They're just in a bit of a mess at the moment. You actually feel a little bit sorry for Glasner, although he's in control of his own future. He's seeing all these best players. He lost Eze in the summer. Gahey's gone, who is his captain, England defender, and potentially his main striker's about to go as well. So,
Mike, thank you for that. Mike Anstead, sport head of content at The Sun, has talked about his transfer window. My transfer window with the politics side is Andy Burnham. He, being a mayor, he's now actually got to decide. He hasn't even got until Sunday. He's got to decide by tomorrow at 5 o'clock whether he is going to go for the nomination for Gorton and Denton for that by-election. And believe me, when the locals and the by-election happens, that's my FA Cup, Mike. Let me tell you, Mike, thank you very much for that. On the main story we're talking about today, the fact that so many people are incredibly annoyed, loads of them getting in touch with about Donald Trump's comments on our servicemen and women, the 457 of them who died in Afghanistan, 150,000 of course who served over the course of those 20 years. Let's just remind ourselves what the Defence Minister and war hero himself, Al Cairns, has been saying about Trump's comments.
So tracking some comments made that NATO troops stayed a little off the front lines in Afghanistan and that the US has never necessarily needed us. Well, it's a real shame to hear that. The only time NATO has ever enacted Article 5 was after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, when the United States and the world rallied to the support of the US. Our agencies, our forces, our politicians, we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and responded. On Afghanistan, frankly, this is utterly ridiculous. Many courageous and honourable service personnel from many nations fought on the front line. Many fought way beyond it. I'd served 5 tours in Afghanistan. Many alongside my American colleagues. We shed blood, sweat and tears together.
Al Cairns there, the Defence Minister, talking about Afghanistan and Donald Trump's comments. There's a lot around about the military, about veterans this week. Particularly because of the passage of that bill in Parliament about prosecuting veterans. That's something that Richard in London wants to talk about. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000, and it's in the context, of course, of Trump's comments, but lots of people have been talking about this for a few days, about this Troubles bill that would involve the prosecution of soldiers. Now it has passed. It's going to the House of Lords. We'll see what happens there. Richard, what's your view on all of this? You're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Peter. I mean, it's I've got a couple of points on Trump as well, but I cannot understand why there's not a huge uproar about this Troubles bill, because
there is on this station, let me tell you, Richard. But I know what you mean elsewhere. I know what you mean.
Well, you all know you all know this better than me. You're obviously from Northern Ireland. But, my understanding was really very simple. We let IRA terrorists out of prison on the basis that there was an Anglo-Irish agreement, simply saying, well, okay, this is over. We draw a line under it. There were lots of people, for instance, people like Peter Hitchens were very angry about the fact that we actually did draw that line, but we did, and this is nearly 30 years ago, Peter. Yeah. So I can't see how this government. I mean, if this is, I mean, I obviously, you can tell it's. I can't quite find the words. And I want to make.
Well, listen, I know how you feel, and you're making your point well, Richard. It is 28 years from the Belfast Agreement. You're absolutely right that involved prisoner releases for terrorists, loyalists, and Republicans. We know that 3,500 people were killed over the course of the Troubles. The vast majority of them by terrorists, 90% of them, and the majority of those by IRA terrorists. And we know that many of those people served some time, but essentially got off scot-free. The question is now what we should do if there's new evidence that comes to light. And we know that some soldiers did exactly what they were supposed to do. Most of them served with great bravery and distinction. Some of them didn't. I mean, it does seem pretty lopsided the way the judgment, the justice system will be now in regard to this.
I mean, it was a war, Peter. I mean, let's say you know better than any of us. It was a war, with a war, you either end it or you don't. I mean, essentially, as with Germany, obviously there was a trial for the worst of the Nazis, but for the most part, we simply said, well, okay, this is over. And I can't understand this government. There's something very spiteful about this government. They signal out, they target at their enemies, it's funny how they've got absolutely no desire to go after.
Well, it's interesting because of course Starmer is standing. You're right about the rape gangs. We will continue talking about that, absolutely. But it's interesting how Starmer is rebuking Trump today, which he has to do, but so many people, including yourself, Richard, making the very, very good point that actually he needs to stand up for our troops in many other ways as well. Thank you for your call. That's Richard in London there. Prince Harry has waded into this. He, of course, served in Afghanistan. Responding to Trump's comments, he has released a statement. Prince Harry says in 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first and only time in history. It meant that every allied nation was obliged to stand with the United States in Afghanistan in pursuit of our shared security. Allies answered that call. I served there, I made lifelong friends there, and I lost friends there. The United Kingdom alone had 457 service personnel killed, says Prince Harry. Thousands of lives were changed forever. Mothers and fathers buried, sons and daughters, children were left without a parent. Families are left carrying the cost. Those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect, and we all remain united and loyal to the defence of diplomacy and peace. So that is Prince Harry wading into this, a rare statement from him on a political issue. It is a political issue, of course. It's an issue of our nation's history. It's in the Afghani history, it's American history, and Trump's comments as well. So many people who are in touch as well, especially about Al Cairns. Barry says Al Cairns happy to represent the government throwing Northern Ireland veterans under the bus. Ian in Somerset sounds like Trump's total understanding of history is that of Hollywood and has always laid claim to every win. It's disgusting Americans might believe this as fact. And another person says, if you look at casualties by country in Afghanistan of NATO allies, he has a point. Dawn in Chelmsford. Carl Turner, so fortunate that Keir Starmer always answers his questions, but Starmer doesn't answer anyone else's questions, says Dawn in Chelmsford. Well, whatever your question, whatever you want to talk about, let me know. We're going to speak to a veteran of Afghanistan in just a few minutes' time, a former Royal Marine. Loads to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Get your points on the air in the next hour.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Friday evening. It's a busy, busy show. Loads of people want to get their voice and their opinions heard about what Donald Trump has said about our servicemen and women, saying that they kept back from the front lines. Careless comments or deliberate comments, whatever you think they are, however offended or not offended you are, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We'll speak to a former Royal Marine in just a second, and also Dr. Bob Seeley, who served himself in Iraq and Afghanistan, former MP. Loads to discuss on all of this. We'll also talk about the upcoming by-election and Andy Burnham in Manchester as well. Lots of people want to get in touch on that. And, of course, as we look forward to the weekend, it is the final of The Traitors tonight. Are you watching it? I certainly am. Absolute cliffhanger. Somebody accused me earlier on of saying there's spoilers that I was giving out. I'm giving out absolutely no spoilers. I know nothing more than people who have watched it. I don't know who's won. I don't know who has got through to the final, which was the cliffhanger last night. Loads to discuss on matters important and perhaps not so important too in regard to The Traitors and Victoria Beckham. We're going to discuss her. She's apparently got to number one. There's a bit of light and shade in this show, as always. Loads to discuss, particularly on Donald Trump. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. You can follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, less than a minute please, to 0344 499 1000. That is the number for WhatsApp text messages and also for phone calls too. Get your voice on the air, as I say, 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss in the next hour here on Talk Drive. Well, thank you for your very kind comments, your loyalty and your listening and viewing for the last 3 weeks here on Talk Drive. Next week, Kevin's taking over Talk Drive for all of next week. I'm going to be in for Ian Collins on Monday between 1 and 4, but actually over the weekend I'm going to go back to my weekend shows for the next couple of weeks at least anyway, and I will be in tomorrow at 10 o'clock, so I hope you enjoy me tomorrow at 10. There's so much to discuss, a very good story about shoplifting that we're going to discuss, and lots of other things too between 10 and 12:30 tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, and indeed on Sunday morning between 10 and 1, then I'm back on Monday as well between 1 and 4. So loads to discuss today. Let's just remind ourselves about Donald Trump's controversial comments.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
Well, this afternoon, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has reacted to all of this. He's responded to the comments, and this is what he said.
Let me start by paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country. Well, I've made my position clear, and what I say to Diane is if I had misspoken in that way or said those words, I would certainly apologise, and I'd apologise to her. We have a very close relationship with the US, and that is important for our security, for our defence and our intelligence, and it's very important we maintain that relationship. But it is because of that relationship that we fought alongside the Americans for our values in Afghanistan. And it was in that context that people lost their lives or suffered terrible injuries, fighting for freedom, fighting with our allies for what we believe in.
Loads of reaction to this, not just from our viewers and listeners, but lots and lots of politicians. We're not going to play all those clips again, but Prince Harry has released a statement in the last few minutes saying in 2001 NATO invoked Article 5 for the first and only time in its history. It meant that every allied nation was obliged to stand with the United States in Afghanistan in pursuit of our shared security. Allies answered that call. I served there and made lifelong friends there, and I lost friends there. The United Kingdom alone had 457 service personnel killed. Thousands of lives were changed forever. Mothers and fathers buried, sons and daughters. Children were left without a parent. Families are left carrying the cost. Those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect, and as we all remain united and loyal to the defence of diplomacy and peace. That is what Prince Harry has said. Just one message I'm going to read out before our next guest from Selena in Liverpool. She says, "Hi Peter, my son served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he served in the bomb squad in Northern Ireland. He never stood at the back, and I'm lucky mine came home." Great show. Selena, thank you for that. Let's speak to Tom Frierson, who is a former Royal Marine. He served on Herrick 12 in 2010 with Delta Koi 40 Commando. And Tom, I know that you gave great service to this country. What do you think of President Trump's comments?
Well, I'm not surprised by them. I'm saddened, disappointed to a degree. The narrative, whether he did them on purpose to provoke or get an upper hand, or whether he did them because he genuinely believes that, I honestly don't know and can't speak for that. But I just look at the narrative he's had on lots of other politics, from COVID all the way through immigration, women on breastfeeding, all the different things that he comes out with. It hasn't surprised me that he's made a comment like this, but I would speak for a lot of people in the armed forces community, and especially for the Royal Marines and the Royal Marines Association, which I'm part of, that we are just disappointed because it's just false and it's the wrong narrative that he's giving out.
Loads of people, every single person who's contacted my programme today, and there have been many of them, are absolutely clear about this, that they know that this is factually wrong. Of course it's factually wrong. It's as clear as day that it's factually wrong. Anybody who's followed anything of the news, anything of the sacrifices that your comrades made, anything of the facts, the history of this country, of Afghanistan and America over the past 25 years, knows what the facts are. Are you worried that there are people who will accept this as fact?
Possibly, yeah. And the narrative that might go out there to, I was listening to something the other day about what children would think of the things that Trump is saying about, other politics around the world, and is what will they hear, and then what will they take on board, and what the future's going to think about what actually happened out there. Because, he's a very powerful man. He gets around the world. People do listen to him. He's got a lot of power. And with that comes a great responsibility, and he doesn't seem to be, basically in the terms I'd use, being a good egg about it. He's using it for his own gain and to put down other people and other countries, especially, to possibly gain the upper hand. I don't know. I'm not a politician. It's interesting that, some of our viewers and listeners are questioning Keir Starmer this week because of the Veterans Bill that has gone through, the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill that has gone through Parliament, prosecution of soldiers. There are also people, I brought up the point about President Biden, the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the fact is that, as you say, you're not a politician. And the point is that the men and women who serve this country aren't politicians, but they're following the orders that politicians gave them. You didn't have a choice. You signed up, you served, you fought bravely, you did what you had to do. I just wonder how people like you will feel looking back on the sacrifices you made, looking back on your comrades who fell, when you hear these kind of comments. First of all, I will say we did make a choice, as in we chose to join the military. Of course. Join a unit. We weren't forced to go. But yeah, we did. As soon as you're in, you do what you're meant to do. You do your job, and we definitely did our job. I can speak for me as a Royal Marines Commando, and we'll talk about front lines in a moment. But the thing is that we didn't do it for the politicians. We didn't do it for being told to do it. We did it for the guy next to you. Whether he was a British Royal Marines Commando, a British other force, whether he was an American that was stood by the side, a Dane, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they are. You did it for the guys next to you on your shoulder. When a firefight happened, and it did often, in the roles we were doing, you did it for the people around you. It wasn't about the politicians. Tell us about that front line, because
the kind of things you saw and dealt with and fought within those firefights that you talk about, it's unimaginable to someone like me who's never spent a day in uniform who would run away from that. You ran towards it.
So first of all, front lines. This is the point. The front line was pretty much the border of Afghanistan. We were surrounded by it. We lived amongst the front line. I spent a lot of my time out in mobilised operations groups. So we would go out on vehicles in packets of 3 or 12 vehicles, and we'd go out into the desert, and we'd go be in Taliban country, and we'd go and do a role. We were given a very specific role to do, and we did that. And we were out behind what you call the front line. But then when we were back on bases like FOBs, we were getting shot at, IDF'd, that's indirect fire, like mortars. But then even if you went back to Kandahar or more, some of the other air bases, you know, they were getting IDF'd as well. So every day you were in it, and especially if you were in a forward operating base or a patrol base, which were even more remote, or out in the desert like we were, every moment of the day and night, you were in the front line, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. Tom, when you think back on that period, and when, you know, it's very recent that the withdrawal happened, of course, but it's not that recent when people were there. You were there now 15 or so years ago. It started around after 9/11, which happened outside of the memories of some of the people I work with who are, you know, 23, 24 years old, who don't remember 9/11 happening, which seems a crazy thing. When we look back on Afghanistan, when we look back at what you and your comrades did, what would your message be, if we just cast aside what Donald Trump said for a second, what would your message be to our viewers and listeners about what we should remember about that period, about what the truth actually was?
The truth actually was we responded. You know, Article 5 was mentioned, and we responded to that, and we made sacrifices in the 457 deaths, and then also, you know, the ones that came home with physical injuries and the ones that came home with mental injuries, which, you know, I've seen a lot of. And I think it's important that we continue with things like the Royal British Legion and Festival of Remembrance and those things to remember that this did happen. It happened for a reason. Whether you agree with the reason or not, it happened for a reason. We went there, we all made sacrifices. We're still making sacrifices every single day, and learning from it, and hopefully that it won't happen again. And that we can, you know, remember those fallen, but also remember why we can try to avoid war in the first place. And if we have to, if we're forced to, then we can step up as a nation, as we've always done. We're one of the first in every single time, especially the Royal Marine Commando units. But I mean, as a nation, we're first in every time. Remembering that we do that and we don't run away from the fight. We stand up for what's right.
Perhaps less Tom Frierson and more Tom Fearsome. Thank you so much for your service to this country, Tom. I really appreciate it. Thank you for speaking to me today. Dr. Bob Seeley is with me too, former Conservative MP, military expert, author of Total War about new forms of warfare in the 21st century. Bob has seen lots of active service in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya in the campaign as well against ISIS. Bob, what do you make of these comments, and what politically should happen now, do you think?
I think the comments are really offensive, and I hope the President of the United States is going to apologise. And I'm really hoping that, I mean, I think the problem for him is that he's got away for saying some quite risky things in recent years, or certainly recent months. But to say something which is, I think, so personally offensive to thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in this country who have lost loved ones or relatives or friends, or people who were badly injured, or the 457 who were killed, I think this is a bit of a watershed moment for Trump, and not in a good way.
What should Keir Starmer do now? He said there are appalling comments. We saw that clip earlier on. Should he call the ambassador? Should he ring Donald Trump? What should he do? How can we get beyond this? Because we need to.
Okay, I mean, okay, credit to Keir Starmer. I mean, I think politically this is quite useful for him, because he's been accused of being a bit of a Trump poodle within the Labour Party, and this clearly gives himself a chance to distance himself very much now from Trump, and maybe put a line under being very sort of almost too close to the Trump administration in the past. So I think people on the left will like what he's said. But actually, to give Starmer his credit, I think he's spoken for lots of people now who have said, we don't like, you know, what Starmer has said. He's actually spoken for the nation for once. I don't think he's done much of that up till now, but I think absolutely by speaking out, by saying it's absolutely wrong, that he completely disagrees, I think he's touched the public mood and he's spoken for the public. So credit where credit's due to Starmer. Yeah, I would call the ambassador in and I would say, what the hell do you think you're saying? How dare you? I want a public apology from you. I want a public apology from the President of the United States. I don't think that is unreasonable in the circumstances.
Do you think it's going to happen, though? I mean, Donald Trump is not well known for apologising for things.
Do I think he's going to apologise, or do I think that Starmer is going to call in the ambassador?
Both.
Well, Starmer should call in the ambassador. So here's my advice to Starmer. Call in the ambassador and give them a massive dressing down and do it very publicly. You call the ambassador not into the Foreign Office. You call the ambassador very, very publicly into Downing Street. You make it a very short statement. You make it a very short meeting. The ambassador does not sit down. The ambassador stands up and you read them the Riot Act and you say, what the hell do you think you're doing, pardon my French, and then they leave pretty in short shrift afterwards. And I think the ambassador in and out of Downing Street in 10 minutes, I think that sends a pretty good signal. And that is what I would be advising Starmer to do. Trump, I think people around Trump, look, Trump had a very, very good team around him before. And the American military, the American Marine Corps, they probably think the British Army is not what it was and it's too small, but they also have a lot of respect for us. And as Tom previously was saying, everyone who's been out there, a lot of us served alongside US and Dutch and Norwegian, I can't remember the others out there, but Estonians. We served alongside other people in the US and in NATO. So there are probably people around Trump who are now saying, you shouldn't have said that, especially about the Brits, because actually there's 450 Brits killed. Let me remind you about Article 5. Yeah. So people who are willing to stand up to Trump should tell him now, actually, that's the reality. And maybe if you can't bring yourself to apologize, what you can bring yourself is to say, yeah, okay, I misspoke, and credit where credit's due. Because actually, we know that the Danes, the Brits, the Canadians actually had higher casualty rates than the Americans. And to say we weren't on the front line is absolute rubbish.
Thank you, Bob. That's Bob Seeley there. Dr. Bob Seeley, former Conservative MP and military expert. Nick in Bangor says, great show, Peter. As an ex-serviceman, I'm not particularly impressed with Trump's comments, but there are words and we know it was nonsense, says Nick. I do think Farage should ensure Trump is educated on the facts and asked for a direct apology for what he said Nick. Andy in Bridgend says, good evening, Peter. The last time President Trump visited the UK on a state visit in September last year, he was given a warm welcome by the royal family and British people. Several months later, that welcome would be completely different. Every time he opens his mouth lately, he puts both his feet in it. I was taught to think before I speak, something he needs to do. Great show, says Andy. Well, thank you for that. Let's hear a voice note from Elisa on Donald Trump.
I have to admit that I'm a bit of a Trump fan, although I don't agree with everything he says or does, and there aren't many people with whom I agree 100%. On this issue, however, he is absolutely wrong, and the sooner he apologises, the better. I stand with the British military and our fabulous veterans. And as for Starmer, what's the point of getting him to apologise? It wouldn't be sincere, just like everything he says. It's never sincere.
Dave's been in touch from Dorset. He's a Falklands veteran, and he says how much help was afforded by NATO during the Falklands War. Maggie and the then President of the USA, that was Reagan of course, spoke and some American equipment was used. As far as I know, no manpower was sent or offered, but will we ever know the whole truth, says Dave. Bridie says, hi Peter, it's all good and well Heathrow changing its liquids rule, but it just causes confusion when the others don't. My brother got stung recently, flew out with the relaxed rules, and then got his aftershave confiscated on the return flight. It should all be uniform and be done with it. Fran in West Sussex says, Carl Turner for Prime Minister. I've never voted Labour in my life, but listening to his passion and dedication was inspiring, says Fran. There's certainly no mucking about with Carl Turner, it must be said. And actually, he had some views on Andy Burnham, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Andy Burnham could well, we will know by this time tomorrow actually, whether he is seeking the nomination for Gorton and Denton, which is the constituency in Greater Manchester that Andrew Gwynn has stood down from. We will look into all of that and find out what on earth the Baron of the Manor of Northstead is, because if one man will know, it is Michael Crick, who is joining us next. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
couldn't believe when I heard this report yesterday that the man could be frankly so stupid and so outrageous as to make those comments. I understand that many advisers on the British side who heard about this before he uttered those words. And as you said, we lost 457 of our own young people fighting a very gritty campaign up until 2014. I was talking with my own middle son just about an hour ago, who did a tour in Afghanistan as well as previously in Iraq. And he says, actually, Dad, the man's completely mad.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now then, let's talk about Andy Burnham and what is happening with Labour at the moment. It's fascinating because Andrew Gwynn, who was a health minister actually, was suspended from the Labour Party after some WhatsApp messages came to light. He's had bad health for quite a while actually, and on health grounds he is leaving politics. He was an independent on the backbenches, having had the Labour whip suspended out of the Labour Parliamentary Party. Michael Crick is the broadcaster and journalist who's going to take us through the next bit, because Andy Burnham, there's so many different controversies about that. Michael, first of all, tell us about Andrew Gwynn, because he is now Baron of the Manor of Northstead. If anybody knows what this means, it will be you. I know a little bit about it, but you're the nerd's nerd, Michael. So take us through it.
In fact, if I remember, Peter, if I remember rightly, about 25 years ago, you and I did a story about this.
Sounds about right.
When a Sinn Féin MP.
Yes, it was Jerry Adams who he got a Crown office, because I was saying, hold on a second, he's got a Crown office. He's not going to like that as a Republican. I remember that.
I know, and we made a bit of a joke and a fuss about this. I mean, it's an absurd legal manoeuvre. I mean, the theory was that in the old days, someone could not be a member of Parliament if one held an office of profit under the Crown. And I hear people saying, well, what about government ministers? And in fact, in the old days, up until about 100 years ago, if you were appointed a government minister, you had to fight a by-election in order for that to be the fact you were holding this office of profit under the Crown to be confirmed. It's all very complicated, and I have to confess, I don't fully understand it.
It's just sort of a mechanism now, really, isn't it?
It's a mechanism whereby you apply for that job, the Baron of the Manor of Northstead, and then the other one is Steward, is better known, the other one actually, for some reason, Steward of the Chiltern Hundreds. And so when people resign from Parliament, alternately, they hold these two offices for I'm not quite sure for how long. Not for very long.
I think I remember.
They don't actually get, and the absurd, even more absurd, they don't actually get paid.
Yeah, you don't get any money. But I think it's until the next one. I think you hold the office until the next person stands down from Parliament. Well, it's marvellously absurd and oh so British. But what it actually means, Michael, of course, is that the nominations are now open. There's officially going to be a by-election. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, has to decide by this time tomorrow, not even 24 hours, to decide whether he is going to be putting himself forward for the nomination for Gorton and Denton. What do you make of this? What do you think he'll do? What do you think will happen?
I think he'll go for it. I think Andy Burnham, things didn't go very well for him at the Labour conference. He was a bit too public in his ambitions in Liverpool last September, October, whenever it was. And everybody said, right, that's Andy Burnham finished. But he was making it very clear privately that he wasn't finished at all, and that we'd be seeing more of him in January, in the new year. And so he'll go for it. And now the question is whether Starmer and his allies will try and block him on the National Executive Committee from standing for the by-election, because ultimately they decide who their candidates are. Anybody who's chosen by the local party has to be endorsed by the National Executive. And when it comes to by-elections, there is a huge involvement by the National Party. Essentially, they decide in the end. Now, has Burnham got the votes on the National Executive? Now, there are a lot of journalists at Westminster who seem to think that Burnham hasn't got the votes on the National Executive. But I'd urge some caution. A supporter from Manchester of Burnham said they reckon he's actually got a majority of 1 on the National Executive. It's very complicated. There are about 40 people on the National Executive. And the trouble is Westminster journalists tend to deal with those members of the NEC that are MPs and ministers, and they're likely to be pro-Starmer, whereas the Burnham supporters tend to be people who are perhaps from the low constituencies or from the trade unions.
And there have been MPs already, Michael, haven't there, who will say, look, this cannot be a London stitch-up as to who the candidate is. Other speculation about an ethnic minority candidate or an all-women shortlist, for example.
That's the way out. I mean, and the problem is, if Starmer notably blocks this through his allies, in a way that makes Starmer look even weaker than he is right now. But they can come up with, a bit like the Baron of the Manor of Norstead, they can come up with some other things. So, for instance, they could say, right, well, Gorton and Denton, we're going to return to that old practice we had of imposing an all-women shortlist on the seat, because there aren't many women Labour MPs in that part of the world. And you'll remember that in the past, Labour used to tell all sorts of constituencies they could only have women on the shortlist in order to get more women in Parliament. That came to an end. This is quite complicated. That came to an end in 2019 when Labour actually elected more women than men, amazingly enough. The first time any major party in history. But it slipped back down again at the last election. So there are now slightly more men in Labour MPs in Parliament were men than who are women. And so that would be one way of doing it, but it would look a bit underhand and a bit like interference. I mean, the other thing is to insist that, or at least to be for everybody to say, well, there's got to be an ethnic minority candidate, and it's a strongly ethnic minority constituency, and that might also make it easier for them to beat Reform in that seat. So there's all sorts of complications here, but it's going to be an absolute battle royal. And then, of course, you've got the whole possibility of who else for the other parties might stand.
This was going to be my next question, actually, because you've got, do Reform run someone local, or do they run someone with a big national profile, someone maybe like Zia Youssef, for example? What about the Green Party, Zach Polanski? Just tell us your thoughts on all of that.
Well, I think Zia Youssef, it must be tempting for him. I mean, he must feel a bit bruised right now. There was a time he was regarded as Farage's number 2. And every time a new defector arrives or he gets demoted, Zia Youssef sort of slips slightly down the pecking order within Reform. So getting into Parliament would be a big boost for him. But I don't think he's got a local connection. He'll no doubt correct me on that if I'm wrong. Zach Polanski, it looks a bit odd when the Greens are doing so well right now that their leader is not in Parliament. But I've been led to believe he won't actually go for it, and he'll bide his time and try for somewhere else later on, maybe even wait till the general election. And then the third juicy possibility, in fact, he's said so today, that George Galloway, the leader of the Workers' Party.
Yes.
Now, George Galloway actually stood in the old Manchester Gorton seat, which is partly this seat before the boundary changes, at a by-election that occurred in 2017, and then it was abandoned because the general election was called, and Galloway stood at the subsequent general election, and he came third in this seat, and he regards himself as being a bit of a Mancunian, does Galloway. I remember having a conversation about this, in which he claimed to support my team, Manchester United. But actually, he's very knowledgeable about United. So I think that's probably true. So you could have 4 potential leaders fighting the same by-election, 2 of whom have names beginning with Z. So you could have Burnham, Polanski, Galloway, and I forgot the other one.
Zia Youssef, yeah.
Zia Youssef, yeah. So that would be the by-election to beat all by-elections.
When do you think it'll actually happen? Do you think that they'll do it on the 7th of May?
I think they have to, really, because by-elections are very expensive, both for the public purse and for the political parties. And in a funny way, Burnham could write, if he was chosen, he could write to Starmer's rescue, because if Labour get a dreadful result in all the locals they're fighting and Scotland and Wales, but they were to win this by-election, Gorton and Denton, then it would it might make the overall defeat for Starmer and Labour not look quite so bad. And actually, I think Labour must be favourites for this seat. I mean, initially I thought, likely reform area. But if you look at the seat, Manchester's been doing rather well economically compared with the rest of the country, which of course helps Burnham's case. And the growth rate there is about 3%. Everybody else would love a growth rate of 3%. You've got in some of the wards are actually in the city of Manchester. 4 of the wards of the 7 wards are in the city of Manchester, and that's full of middle-class, university, academic types, trendy types, liberal, left-leaning types. So I think that Reform may struggle. They got 14% last time, compared with 50% for Labour, but I don't think we can be certain by any means that this is a Reform victory. And I think the odds are, I think Labour will nick it, but probably only just.
Very interesting. Thank you, Michael, as always. Michael Crick, broadcaster and journalist. And if anyone knows a by-election, it's Michael Crick, let me tell you. Loads more to discuss on all of that. But I want to speak to Matt in Cheshire now about these elections. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. 03444991000, the number you've called. Haven't spoken in a wee while. Are you doing all right? All good?
Yeah, not bad at all, Peter. And you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. What point would you like to make today, Matt?
One, just on what Michael Crick just said, Gorton and Denton, there are no liberal, left-leaning university types in those areas whatsoever. He's talking about nearer Manchester, the city centre. He's talking about other parts of Manchester. Denton and Gorton are nothing like that whatsoever.
Okay, fair enough.
My main point would be, it's about the local elections and the cancelling of them, and Labour saving a few quid, then they don't have to repeat them again the year after. The Brexit referendum cost roughly £130 million to administer, and Keir Starmer wanted another one not long after.
Yeah, that's true.
Which would have cost probably another £130 million. So for a man that likes to save money, maybe a few £1 million on local elections, he seems to have forgot that he was happy to spend £130 million.
It's a very good point, Matt, and I can't stand it because often there are loads of people who say, look, we've got to save money. Of course we do with the public services. There's loads of waste all over the place. The thing that drove me up the wall a couple of weeks ago was West Midlands Police, the Police and Crime Commissioner, saying, oh, well, there could be a costly inquiry into all of this, the lies that were told to Parliament about Maccabi Tel Aviv. And you're going, well, actually, there are some things that we shouldn't spend money on, but there's some things we should spend money on, and maybe elections and maybe inquiries into whether chief constables were lying and how they were lying and on what they were lying about. Maybe that's actually a good use of public money because it brings some level of accountability, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people are desperate to vote on this government, and they don't care what the election is. They don't care if it's, local elections or a general election. So I'm pretty sure the turnout will rocket up on what they usually are.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Lots of people do come out when they are annoyed with the government. Matt, really good to talk to you. It's Matt in Cheshire there, and I hope to speak to you again soon, Matt, maybe even on my weekend programmes. I'm on between 10 and 12 tomorrow and 10 and 1 on Sunday. Loads to discuss there. Thank you to John in the Isle of Wight, who says, as Commander-in-Chief of the military, where is the statement on Trump's comments from our king, says John. Well, we certainly had one from Prince Harry anyway, who served in Afghanistan himself. Loads to come. We're going to talk more about Trump's comments. Lots of people want to get on the air. If you're one of them, 03444991000. We'll also take a little move into slightly lighter territory, talking about Victoria Beckham getting her single to #1, and the big question many people will be asking tonight: are you faithful or a traitor? Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's talk about Victoria Beckham. Yes, really, she has topped the UK singles chart. Fans have shown support over the feud with Brooklyn Beckham. Sam Dowler is an entertainment journalist and with me now. And just to say, we are going to talk about the traitors, and we will give no spoilers because I don't know anything. All I know is what I have seen. I'm up to date. If you're not up to date, maybe you want to turn the radio down for the next couple of minutes. But essentially, there was a cliffhanger last night. We'll talk about that in a second. But Sam, tell us about Victoria Beckham. She, her single, Not Such an Innocent Girl, actually going to #1, at least on a couple of fringe charts.
I know. No, it's national #1 now.
Oh, okay, good, great.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? She's the only Spice Girl not to have a solo #1 until now, and what a gift from her dear son, Brooklyn Beckham. I bet you didn't think this was going to happen. None of us thought this was going to happen.
It's an odd one, isn't it? Because a lot of people are saying that actually she had to, you know, that this was something that he went nuclear, she wasn't expecting it, and then people sort of rallying behind her and buying her single.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Look, at the end of the day, David and Victoria Beckham are. They're like symbols of a time in all of our lives when, like, you know, we were, you know, it was the cool Britannia time, wasn't it? It was like the country was doing well. We look back on it in like with nostalgia, and we're like Spice Girls, oh, David Beckham winning the football, blah 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 blah. So so what people have is like this kind of like, you know, this rabid, like the things that have happened with, you know, on the showbiz scene with, you know, with the emails with David Beckham to the palace because he didn't get his night.
Yeah, well, they finally got to a stage where they'd got through all that. They got the knighthood. She's now Lady Beckham, and now things don't seem to be going so well for them. Let's just have a quick blast of the song. Sam, is it a good song?
Well, there might be people listening who might come for me. Look, it didn't get to #1 because it's not a fantastic song, but it is obviously the song that the fans have chosen. And Spice Girls fans are rabid, and like at the end of the day, like this is obviously a very trying time for the Beckhams, but Victoria has been pretty much humiliated on a global stage here, like, you know, saying that she did a dirty dance with her son and like by her son, like, and then obviously you've got people who were at the wedding talking about how this happened, that happened. It's humiliating, and for a brand like the Beckhams who keep everything as tight as possibly can be, happy families, blah 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 blah, this must be really painful for her. So the fans' response is to send her to #1. They picked a song, you know, it's what can I say?
It's #1. All I would say about songs that get to #1 is that Mr. Blobby did it at one stage. So there we are. Tell us about the traitors. Huge cliffhanger last night. And if there are people who haven't seen it, I just want to be very clear. For the next 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to talk about it. So if you still have to catch up on last night's episode, you might want to just turn the radio down or TV just for a couple of minutes. But huge cliffhanger. We'll find out if Rachel or James has got through.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know why people get surprised when there's a cliffhanger or a show like this just before.
Yeah, well, that's a stock in trade, isn't it?
I know, it's like that standard. That's what gets you to look at, you know, to come, you know, to get crazy and come rabid looking at the next episode. So yeah, Rachel or James, and obviously, well, are we doing spoilers? Because
no spoilers, no spoilers, please, at all.
Well, we know who the traitors are because
we know who the traitors are. Well, I suppose the bigger question I want to ask, Sam, is why do you think it's such a compelling series? It's had record audiences for the BBC. I am totally addicted to it. I love it. I love the American version as well. I won't be watching the Irish version, but I will watch other versions as well. And I just wonder what you think it is that makes it so compelling.
Look, it is it's just like Big Brother when Big Brother first started. It's human experiment, but
it's got better actually. I mean, Big Brother I thought sort of got worse. The first one was excellent. It was new. No one quite knew what was going on. Yeah. Whereas with this, everybody knows the score, yet still it improves.
Well, that's the point. But the thing is, it doesn't matter which one you are. It's about deception. It's about human beings being deceptive. And people find that fascinating, of course, especially when they have, you know, people like not let's say, you know, a young influencer crowd or anything like that. These are normal people. They do it on purpose. They get people, so they want to watch somebody and like how like the machinations within their own brain, as in like how are you so, like, for example, Roxy. Well, I don't know if you remember Roxy.
Yeah, of course I do. Yep.
She was fantastic, and like they lied to her face.
Yeah, and she actually said at the end that she wanted when she was leaving, she said she wanted Rachel or Stephen to win, the two people who are actually the traitors. Sam, listen, thank you. It's going to be a really interesting evening tonight. Sam Dollar, entertainment journalist there. I will certainly be watching. I'm actually going to a thing after this programme, and I'm going to be late back, so I've got to stay off all social media. So I don't know who has won and see what has happened. Fascinating programme, and something the BBC does well, which isn't everything. Lots of people want to talk about Donald Trump. We will, of course, return to that story. We'll take calls right up to 7 o'clock and speak to Kevin O'Sullivan about what's coming up on his programme between 7 and 9 in this studio, and then what just happened between 9 and 10. Loads more to discuss. If you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the big controversy that you want to talk about today are Donald Trump's comments. They were on Fox News. He talked about the UK Army in Afghanistan. This is what he said.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there, or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
I think it's fair to say you're pretty furious about this. The Prime Minister appears to be too. This is what he has said. Keir Starmer.
Let me start by paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country. If I had misspoken in that way or said those words, I would certainly apologise, and I'd apologise to her. We have a very close relationship with the US, and that is important for our security, for our defence and our intelligence, and it's very important we maintain that relationship. But it is because of that relationship that we fought alongside the Americans for our values in Afghanistan. And it was in that context that people lost their lives or suffered terrible injuries, fighting for freedom, fighting with our allies for what we believe in.
Sir Keir Starmer responding to what Donald Trump has said. Lots of response to this. Prince Harry has responded, loads of political leaders. The UK Afghan veterans community say they are proud of the service of the 150,000 UK personnel who served alongside our coalition allies in Afghanistan, which numbered at one time 48 nations, including the US and UK. We will never forget the 457 UK service persons who paid the ultimate sacrifice, are wounded, and the families and friends who live on. Right now we're focusing on supporting our community with the pilot of world-class mental health awareness training that we will be announcing more about on our channels soon. The Royal British Legion as well, their Director General Mark Atkinson said, the service and sacrifice of British personnel in Afghanistan cannot be called into question, and we condemn any comments that undermine their extraordinary contribution. 457 British personnel lost their lives in Afghanistan, and thousands more and their families now live with a lifelong physical and mental impact from service in that conflict. The dedication and sacrifices of men and women in the British Armed Forces from the UK, from the Commonwealth and beyond to protect our freedoms and support our allies deserve our deep and ongoing respect and gratitude. That is what the Royal British Legion has said. Laura's in Wiltshire. Laura, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say about this?
Peter, I'm living in Wiltshire, surrounded by military and ex-military personnel. I could not be more appalled by what Trump has said. But let us not let that take away from what
Laura, it's not a great line. We're going to try and get you back on a line, a better line, in just a second. I'll promise I'll try and bring you in before the end of the programme again. Andrew in Halifax is our next caller. Andrew, what do you make of this?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Well, as you know, I'm a firm fan of Trump, but I have to say that I'm very disappointed and a little bit disgusted about the remarks that he's made today, and I think he should apologise for them. So I'll put that on the record. But let's also look at it another way. It's not Donald Trump who's brought forward legislation that will likely drag dozens of our armed forces through the courts that served in Northern Ireland on the basis of spurious allegations from disreputable people for things that happened more than 50 years ago. So if Keir Starmer's listening, please spare me this I love our armed forces cobblers, because it's as hollow as his personality.
A lot of people feel that way, Andrew. A lot of people getting in touch with us today feeling that way and feeling that Keir Starmer actually, that's part of what we should be looking at here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Despite my grave disappointment with Trump, I would still take 100 Donald Trumps over the abomination that resides in Downing Street.
And listen, I think it's interesting what you're saying here, particularly about the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, as well as what Trump has said. I mean, Trump will have forgotten about it already. He'll have moved on. Lots of people very, very angry and annoyed about this. But it's, I'm not diminishing this at all. It's a big story. We've talked about it for nearly 3 hours, and I'm sure Kevin O'Sullivan will continue talking about it, and rightly so. But the fact is that this is a war of words. It'll continue to annoy an awful lot of people. Perhaps the president will apologise. I think he should. Action will be taken, but things will continue to cooperation between the United States and the United Kingdom will continue. The bill that's been through this week, as you correctly say, that's going to have major ramifications for people, especially as we've seen so many of these trials collapse. We've seen so many people who've been pursued through the courts with evidence that judges have said is not credible and is not up to the standard that it needs to be up to. And no matter what people did, and the vast majority of people who serve in uniform, as I've said on a number of occasions, served with great bravery and distinction. They allowed the peace process to happen. They allowed me to grow up in peace in Northern Ireland, and they kept us safe. The point is that some of them fell below those standards, but that justice will probably never be done because of the passage of time, because evidence has been destroyed or discarded or left or whatever. So actually, it is a process of dragging people through the courts, and that's what's left at the end of this, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. I mean, I'd ask you to make this analogy, Peter. Say you were back at school and there were two guys in school that didn't like you very much. Let's call them Smith and Jones, for sake of argument.
Okay.
And Smith comes up to you and he says, Peter, I hate you. I hate your family. You're horrible. I wish you'd go away. Blah-de, blah-de, blah. And he says all these hurtful things. And he makes you cry. And it's awful. But then the other one, Jones, says to you, I tell you what, Peter, I'm going to get you. And I'm never going to tell you where, and I'm never going to tell you when, but I'm going to get you on the way home from school.
Mm-hmm.
Between school and home, I'm going to get you and I'm going to duff you up. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, who would you feel is more malevolent?
Certainly the second one. Certainly the second one.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that is Starmer.
Okay.
And I can't do with the hypocrisy. I really cannot do with it.
Well, listen, thank you for your thoughts. And Jason in the Lake District's been in touch and says what Trump said is unforgivable. For this shower to come out publicly supporting our troops just days after clearing the way to sue our ex-soldiers in Northern Ireland is another example of Starmer being the biggest hypocrite in politics, in Jason's opinion. Ron's in Tyne Weir. Ron, what do you think about this? You were in the army yourself for quite a while. Ron, are you with us?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Right, well, listen, I did 24 years in the army. I'm listening to this, and I think Trump's a very nasty guy, very dangerous. But I don't think he's wrong in this issue. The problem with Trump, he says things and doesn't mean it as he says it. So I don't think he's speaking about all native countries. But I think there's 39 native countries, I don't know. But 6 or 7 turn up every time. The British turn up, the Aussies turn up, they're brilliant. The Canadians turn up, the Kiwis turn up, and the Danes turn up. Lots more, not for military reasons, but for political reasons they can't deploy. So we go through these war zones, and we see at the airport hundreds of other foreign troops that aren't entitled to engage. It's not their fault.
In regard to what, Ron, in regard to what Trump said, do you not think he was wrong to say it?
I think he's a very stupid man, actually. I think he's a very dangerous man. But in America, he's doing a lot of good things.
But does that excuse what he said, though?
Well, actually, I think he speaks without thinking. And I think what he said was totally wrong. But behind the background, I don't think he's speaking about all nations. I think he's speaking generally about all nations. And every time there's a war, Britain steps straight in there.
Well, we know what... Ron, you're right. Our servicemen and women have often come up to the plate and served with great bravery and distinction. Joan's in Sunderland and has some thoughts on this. Joan, what would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hi, Joan.
I agree with President Trump on certain things, but on this one, he is dead wrong, and he needs to apologise. But Starmer is trying to be the great statesman, but he hasn't covered himself in glory either, because what he and his government did to our veterans this week is nothing short of treachery, and that man absolutely disgusts me. And he's standing there with his performing and all this, that and the other. I'm so mad with him, I'm practically speechless.
And a lot of people are feeling the same way, Joan. Certainly, they're very, very annoyed. Just a final quick word from Jenny in Hampshire. Jenny, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, good evening, Peter. Yes. I think Trump's got a very short memory. It wasn't that long ago he was inspecting the guards at Buckingham Palace.
That's right. That's right.
And so he's basically insulted those soldiers, which I find absolutely... I mean, the man, quite honestly, I'm not a liker or a disliker of him, but he needs to learn some manners. It's totally out of order. And Starmer, he is just two-faced.
Why do you think Starmer's two-faced?
Well, you know, he's trying to crucify the army in one respect and saying, oh, this is awful what he said. So the guy's double standard.
Jenny, listen, thanks for your call. You have the final word this evening, apart from, of course, the great Kevin O'Sullivan.
The great Kevin O'Sullivan, indeed.
In studio here between 7 and 9, and then what just happened between 9 and 10.
Yes, my TV show
so
at 9
what's coming up in the next couple of hours?
We need to talk about Prince Harry. We need to talk about Donald Trump. I think this is one of the rare times when in our lives when we have to respect Prince Harry. He was actually there. He is an Afghanistan veteran, and I think he's reflecting the fury of not only military veterans who served there, but the people of this country, the people of NATO countries. You know, 3,600 NATO soldiers died in Afghanistan fighting for America. That's what happened. America were fighting in Afghanistan. They invoked, as Harry said, Article 5 of NATO, which means we all had to go in and out. And now Donald Trump is saying, well, you didn't really go to the front line. 457 British people died, British soldiers died there as well. So, you know, he's a disruptor. He says these things, I think, to deliberately annoy people, but I think he's crossed the line here, and he probably knows it. This is, you know, the thing about Trump is, you know, he's rude, he's infuriating, he's invariably inaccurate, but he's effective. But saying, you know, that British soldiers, NATO soldiers, didn't fight side by side with Americans, I don't know what that is aimed at.
It's beyond careless. I mean, it's not just a stupid thing to say. It's like, what's the point of
exactly,
this?
That's what I was going to say. What is he trying to achieve with this? You suspect it's just that he didn't really know. You know, when he says, oh, you know, we should never have given Greenland back after the war. You didn't have Greenland
in the first place
after the war.
Yeah.
You know, so historically, you know, he's not necessarily at the races very often. So I don't think he's said this to be deliberately upsetting to everybody.
Should he apologise? What